There we go. It's a Wednesday morning, July 2nd, 2025. Welcome live from Lake Wissota. I'm Pat Kreitlow. You're here up north. And this is this. No, well, I guess I could say this is the Civic Media Radio Network, but not really. They're in a news break and commercials. You're here on social media, ready to rock and roll, but we will do that at 6:06, so 5 minutes from right now, on a show that includes an appearance by State Representative Angela Stroud about what's happening up in Superior. We talk about lead water lines a lot as a Milwaukee thing. No, it's all over the place. And in Superior, they have a special circumstance there, and they apparently now have a deal that will not cost homeowners an arm and a leg. So we'll talk to her about that. We'll have a guest talking about the WIAA and its policy on transgender youth participating in sports. It is Wednesday, so we have all kinds of civic media friends with us. Earl Ingram from Southeast Wisconsin, James Kelly from Northwest Wisconsin, and Jimmy Kuska from Southwest Wisconsin. We don't have Melissa Kay today, so no Pigeon Quest and no Brittany Merlot. But we've got plenty else to talk about. Yeah, my thoughts exactly. Plenty more to talk about along the way. Again, coming up at 6:06, 4 minutes from now on the Civic Media Radio Network and right here. We'll see you soon.
Live across Wisconsin on Civic Media, you're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. Now, from our Lake Wissota studio, here is the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Kreitlow.
Well, hey there, Wisconsin. Good morning. It is 6:06. It's a Wednesday morning, July 2nd, 2025. It's another beautiful morning to have you here up north, live from Lake Wissota, from wherever you're spending your mornings listening across the Civic Media Radio Network, or watching us or listening to us on all the other platforms, the app, social media, and much more. We appreciate you being here for the middle of the week. I got a question for you. Can we just bottle this? Because I don't ski or snowmobile or ice fish or whatever. So you get the sun coming up really nice and early, pleasant temperatures. The dew point hasn't started rising yet for the day. If we could just lock this in, wouldn't that be nice? Yes, I know I could wish in one hand, and I can't say the rest because we're on the radio. So let me just get to what's in the show for today. We're going to review the new state budget deal, perhaps best summed up as something for everybody to like and something for everybody to hate. The Joint Finance Committee passed it on Tuesday, so both the Senate and the Assembly will be in session today to consider it, and it is going to draw a mixed bag of votes. In other words, it's going to be a truly bipartisan effort, and nobody gets everything that they want. So that's great, right? No, not if you talk to the people who want to vote no on it. Anyway, we'll review the latest coming up in just a bit. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., the Senate, somewhat surprisingly, although I guess I shouldn't be too surprised that all the Republicans fell in line. They figured out, who could be the 3 no votes, and everybody else had to fold, like Ron Johnson, going spelunking again, because the guy just loves caving. And so the U.S. Senate passed what would become the largest transfer of wealth from the middle class to the upper class and ending of health care coverage in American history. So it's over in the U.S. House. Does that mean it's automatically going to pass out of the House and head to President Trump's desk for a signature? Not quite yet. Again, will enough Republicans fall into line? Quite possibly. There are no more John McCains in Washington, D.C., but we'll see. In our next hour, we'll talk to State Representative Angela Stroud from up north to give us the full picture of a 2-part deal that will lead to the removal of more lead water lines in Superior. It required more than the single bill that was in the legislature that didn't do enough for private homeowners. And so it took Representative Stroud and some local officials to work with a private utility, and she'll give us details on the progress being made to get rid of the lead water lines in Spooner. We'll also talk to a retired pediatric nurse and school board member about the letter she sent to the WIAA, critical of their new restrictions on transgender sports participation in schools. Melissa Baldoff will be along with this week's Climate Check, including a lighter story about climate adaptation. You see, the knock on solar farms has been that all those panels would restrict crop growth or grazing. Well, this being America and all, it didn't take long for folks to get creative in ways that make the solar panels mobile and even provide shade for the cows as they graze underneath. We'll have details about that. Remember, some of you might have known. We heard about it from our friends John and Gordy the other day. We'll also get updates from our Civic Media friends Earl Ingram in southeast Wisconsin, James Kelly in northwest Wisconsin, and Jimmy Kuska in southwest Wisconsin. And, of course, along the way, you can certainly use that Civic Media app to send us your text messages, or you can jump in the comment sections on Facebook or YouTube. You can also email us, radio@upnorthnewswi.com, where you can also answer our question of the week from our Sunday morning newsletter, where we ask, who will be the Republican gubernatorial nominee next year? Now, the budget's almost done, so we're about to hear from Governor Tony Evers on whether he will run next year for re-election to a 3rd term or if he's going to retire. He has not given any hint one way or the other. But regardless, who do you think the Republicans are going to run? So you can see that in our Sunday morning newsletter and also send in your response or just put it in the comment section here. So many ways to join the show. You know who else is ready to join the show? That would be Parker Olson, who's standing by in Madison. He's there. And like I said, we have Civic Media friends, Earl Ingram coming in, James Kelly, Jimmy Kuska, Brittany Merlot is off today, and sadly, Melissa Kay is not unable to join us as well.
I'm so
And
upset.
I know we're bummed. I mean,
This has ruined my day.
this is if there's one thing we wanted, if there's one thing we needed, it was Pigeon Quest.
It was Pigeon Quest. It was without a doubt Pigeon Quest, Pat, brings me so much joy.
It turns out that it has brought joy to others as well, to the point where, as Parker and I put together the 4th of July show so that we can sleep in on Friday, so we'll have a best of show, we had enough there. There's an entire segment dedicated to Pigeon Quest.
It's glorious.
And whether Melissa Kay will get her pigeon or not, and I thought we would learn today, but we will not. I'm very concerned.
I have faith that Paint Bucket will make it to the coop.
I hope so. I'm hoping that Paint Bucket didn't have an accident involving the Colonel's 11 herbs and spices or something like that. So
yeah, he'll get you like that.
Here is hoping. Let's see. So the holiday weekend's coming up. Going to have time to sit and relax for a little bit. It might rain at times, so there might be some indoor activities like streaming going on. And I was going to ask if you have anything new that you're streaming out there, because Sherry and I finished one series on Netflix and we're almost done with the other. The one that we just finished was 4 seasons, the Tina Fey vehicle, about 3 couples and all the phases of life that a relationship can go through. And very nice, for me and my peers. I don't know if the youngins would get much out of it, but I don't know. Maybe if you're newly married, yeah, maybe if you're newly married or in contemplating a long-term relationship, maybe you should watch it and get a feel for the whole long-range view of what's out there. Because you say for better, for worse, for a reason, and you dang well better stick to it. And then the other one was The Residence, which I know a couple of folks on the show have told me about that I really needed to watch. And so we started it and really like it. It's the one from Shonda Rhimes, and it is about the residents in the White House and a murder mystery that goes on there. And it's quirky. We've got 6 of the 8 episodes done. We got 2 more to go here. And so I thought that was kind of nice. Are you streaming anything yourself these days?
I just finished Newsroom the other day.
That's right. You were going retro on the Newsroom.
Yeah, so I got to find something new. I haven't found a show to watch yet, which would be ideal because you can space out a show over more than one sitting. Mm-hmm. However, I do have a list of movies that has been growing. The wonderful and talented Luke Mathers has suggested a number of movies to me so that I understand his references. So
yes, he does love it. He's like the Dennis Miller of civic media, the way he's dropping those pop culture references to us. So
got a couple of those, got a couple from my radio advisor at Whitewater, which I had written down and never got around to. So might be watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood pretty quick here.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. Tony, up in Ashland on YouTube, my wife and I watched 4 seasons, really liked it. We're in our 30s. We're not that old. Yeah, but you're not that young anymore either. So you were right in the target audience. You were fine. He also says, has Pat watched The Waterboy yet? No.
Oh, Waterboy.
But
I don't remember if that's on.
I'll add that to the list. And he notes that he's going to be streaming How Is This Better? Well, how convenient, Tony, for you to lead into this fine promotion for my bosses at Courier Newsroom, the owners of Up North News, who also have several national podcasts and newsletters, including How Is This Better, a Courier production with Akilah Hughes, covering everything from politics to entertainment to tech to late-stage capitalism. How Is This Better challenges the grifters who are controlling our government, our attention, and so much of our daily lives. And in one of her more recent episodes, Akilah Hughes steps into the ring with the progressive liberal, yes, that is his real wrestling name, author Josie Reisman and journalist and former WWE writer Dave Schilling, and they all explore why politics today feels more like WWE than C-SPAN. Akilah and her guests dive into the personas, the crowd work, the heels, the faces, and how both wrestling and politics rely on performance, polarization, and pandering to win over the crowd. And if you've ever wondered why politics feels more like a reality show than real life, this is the episode for you. You can watch How Is This Better on YouTube. You can also watch or listen to it on Spotify. You can also listen to it on Apple as well. Or you can watch right from the Courier website. That's at couriernewsroom.com. And at couriernewsroom.com, again, all kinds of newsletters, podcasts, video series, and more. And How Is This Better with Akilah Hughes should be on your list of things to check out. Let's see. And Tony notes here as well. Dan Schaefer wrote about the wrestlingification of politics sometime back. Time is a flat circle. Now, it's something that I've been saying for some time as well, especially since that groundbreaking moment when you watch the movie Idiocracy. And Parker, you have or haven't seen Idiocracy yet?
I have not. I am currently adding it to the list.
Get that on that little piece of paper there as well. And when you, not even long before you're done with Idiocracy, but certainly afterwards, well, first off, you're clinically depressed about the state of American politics. And, you wonder how much longer it'll be until we have a president named Nacho Supreme or I just shudder at the thought. If you haven't watched Idiocracy yet, you have to. And then watch How Is This Better with Akilah Hughes. Then when you're done being depressed, you will understand why I keep waking up early every day to do this and why other people get out of bed to do what they do. For as literally stupid as some things are in politics, there are also some things worth fighting for. And I'm not going to butter you up and say, do it for your kids, do it for your grandkids. I love my kids. I love my grandkids. I'm doing it for me. This is not the adulthood I signed up for. And I think we all deserve better than what we've got from the likes of, Ron Johnson, Mike Johnson, Derek Van Orden, and J.D. Vance, and Donald Trump. Again, it's been 8 years and I'm still saying Donald Trump got elected president. But yeah, so watch the series, watch the movie, and then rededicate yourself to reaching out to your friends and neighbors. Because here's the thing. With that vote yesterday, that huge transfer of wealth that's going to close hospitals and nursing homes, and it's going to hurt so much in our economy, what were the big cable news networks talking about? The Diddy trial. Yeah. So if we're going to get any better messaging out to voters, we're going to need more outlets like Civic Media and like Up North News and all the rest from Courier Newsroom. And we're going to have to urge people to, listen to our shows and to read our newsletters and to catch us on Spotify and things like that, because it's only through us getting off our duffs and talking to other people. I mean, we are the heroes we've been waiting for. We just have to get out there and do it. I know it's tiring, but we get up and we do it for the hopes of something a little bit better than what some other people have left for us. Brewers were rained out last night, so 2 games today. We'll talk about that coming up in just a sec. First, from the heart of America's Up North, live from Lake Wissota, thank you for making this the place to spend part of your mornings. I'm Pat Kreitlow. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. I feel like I need a hot button for Madeline Kahn and Blazing Saddles. I'm so tired. Can't I just comment on YouTube videos? I don't really want to talk to anybody. Yeah, if we could only get it all done through the comment section, And about
if we solved the world's problems through comment sections,
oh my God,
somehow, some way, I think the world would be worse off.
Quite possibly. Tony, challenge accepted. Tony's now on a quest to save the world through the comment section.
The quest to civilize starts now.
Stop doing that.
Oh, do you hear that?
Of course I hear that.
Oh, why do you hear that?
I don't know. Am I not supposed to hear it? Is that a cue thing again?
Wait. Now do you hear it?
I'm hearing nothing.
Oh, okay. I understand why. Okay. That makes perfect sense. Turns on when you have the on button and the cue on. Understood.
Tony, are we playing all copyrighted music again? No, maybe. I don't know.
For at least one segment.
Yes. Oh, let's see. I guess I could fix that Brewers slide real quick here. 2 games today.
2 games today. Yeah. $20 seconds.
So as I mentioned, the Milwaukee Brewers got rained out in New York for game 1 of their series against the New York Mets, and they're going to do the makeup game today. So there's going to be a split doubleheader, a day-night doubleheader today from New York. So you've got 2 opportunities to hear the Brewers on several Civic Media radio stations. Game 1, the pregame coverage begins at 11:35 this morning. And then for game 2, come on back at 5:35 this evening for the first 2 games of the series with the Mets. And then they'll play again tomorrow, pregame again at 5:35 with the Brewers Mets before they head to Miami for the holiday weekend. By the way, the pitchers today, despite the rainout, Freddie Peralta will start game 1, and then Jacob Mizorowski will be pitching tonight's game. So if you have not seen... Do I have to say this? I guess I will. The Miz. If you want to see The Miz pitch, I like Mizorowski. You know, I mean, I'm Polish too. I just want to emphasize the ski. Mizorowski will be there. Yep, the ski will be there. Are you familiar with Bobby Bonilla Day?
Oh, I was so upset. I didn't realize it was Bobby Bonilla Day yesterday.
I know. I realized we missed it too, but plenty of other folks put out stories about it that reminded me to bring it up today. For folks who don't know, who don't follow sports closely, Bobby Bonilla was a former New York Met. And in the most weirdly negotiated contract in sports history, he agreed to defer a bunch of his salary if it was stretched out over a period of years. And the Mets at the time, and this is way back over a decade ago, rather than pay him $6 million, they said, how about if we pay you $1.2 million every year from 2011 to 2035? So instead of $6 million one time, it's $25 million payments every July 1st. And so every July 1st, Bobby Bonilla, who's been retired for years, gets a check for $1.2 million.
I love baseball contracts, specifically because of this. He's been getting 1.2 mil for 15 years.
That was the first. Now you've got Shohei Ohtani, whose contract is going to be paid on a deferred basis until the year 2043. But the Brewers are not immune from this either. Up until Christian Yelich's $215 million contract extension 5 years ago, the richest Brewer was Ryan Braun, and back in 2011, he extended his contract through the 2020 season. And as a result of deferrals, Bobby Bonilla Day is also Ryan Braun Day. He gets $1.8 million every July 1st until 2031. And Lorenzo Cain. I know you've probably forgotten Lorenzo Cain, but he's owed about $1 million a year this year, next year, and the following year for playing with the Brewers, and he's gone by now.
Boy, he was not a guy who I thought that the Brewers would be okay with doing that for.
Well, I mean, at the time, when you're hot, I guess. And at the time, he was just hot enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was. So again, happy Bobby Bonilla Day to all who celebrate, and by all who celebrate, I mean the payroll offices of several places in Major League Baseball. All right. Well, I wanted to share, if I still have it here somewhere, some of the writings of J.D. Vance. And you're saying, why would you do that? Because J.D. Vance cast the tie-breaking vote to allow the Senate to pass that big bloated boondoggle of a budget bill. And on it goes with all of the massive cuts to Medicaid. And of course, because the internet is forever, some folks have dug out what J.D. Vance said 8 years ago, the last time there was a Trump tax bill that threatened cuts with Medicaid. And back then, Vance was sharply critical of Medicaid cuts, which he cast as a betrayal of Trump voters. Vance said Trump had been elected precisely because he refrained from saying, I'm going to take away your Social Security and Medicaid. In a 2017 op-ed in the New York Times, Vance argued the Republican bill would shift large numbers of people from Medicaid to the private market without ensuring they can meaningfully purchase care in the market. In other words, they'd lose coverage. And Vance suggested that Republicans must stand for some baseline provision of care to working class voters, because otherwise, cuts to Medicaid would betray that principle. That was then. How often do we see this, as Tony puts, Mr. Hillbilly Elegy taking Medicaid away from the people he wrote about? Yes. And again, this too is why people are so cynical on politics. Why they have soured on it is because of people like J.D. Vance, people like Lindsey Graham, who said, back in the day, if we vote for Donald Trump to be president, we will suffer and we will deserve it. Do you know where Lindsey Graham was last weekend? Well, do you remember, maybe you saw it in the news in St. Paul last weekend, lying in state in the Capitol was the former Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives, Melissa Hortman, and her husband, after being shot dead by a political terrorist. And of course, he also wounded another legislator. And then there was the funeral. Former President Joe Biden attended the funeral. Former Vice President Kamala Harris attended the funeral, as did many other dignitaries. The President of the United States did not attend, did not send his regards. I don't even believe he sent a representative. And of course, he insulted Minnesota's governor along the way. So you had over the weekend the split scene of this funeral going on with real leaders, and you had Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump playing golf at the time, playing golf during the funeral. I think that pretty much says it all. Let's pause here, and then in our next segment, again, occasionally we'll bring back things from our 8:30 segment in case you missed it and you had to go to work or whatever. And actually, this is a three-parter. We talked to Corrine Hendrickson about her reaction to the state budget deal and how it impacts childcare. We talked to Dan Schaefer a bit for his analysis, and State Senator Jeff Smith. We talked to him right before the end of the show about the budget deal and the trustworthiness of Republicans. We'll have all that after the Midwest Farm Report here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Today's history lesson is coming up in just a little bit, and actually we'll get started later this segment with a serious note from the history books about Wisconsin's role in the Battle of Gettysburg. Tomorrow on the program, Chad Holmes, Todd Alba, Joe Zapecki, and maybe some birthday cake flavored coffee creamer, because I want to. Maybe we'll find a reason to do that. That's all ahead. Now, as promised, yesterday we were greeted at the very top of the show by news of a new state budget agreement between Governor Evers and legislative Republicans. We've been getting reactions since that time and wanted to play back a little bit of it in case you missed it from yesterday. So first we talked to Corrine Hendrickson about childcare. And just to set this up, affordable childcare has been an issue for a long time. During the pandemic, Governor Evers took some of that pandemic federal relief and put it into a program called Child Care Counts, which was direct payments to support child care providers so they wouldn't close their doors, so that, workers wouldn't have to leave their jobs. But legislative Republicans did not want to put any money into child care counts. They reached a compromise, and you'll hear from Corrine the pluses and minuses of it. That's followed by a little bit of analysis from Dan Schaefer from the recombobulation area, and that's followed by some comments from Eau Claire Democratic State Senator Jeff Smith. But first we start with Corrine Hendrickson with reaction to the budget. Let's check in with Corrine Hendrickson from New Glarus, a child care provider, a leading voice on making sure that state and federal funds don't run dry to support child care providers. The pandemic relief funding is running out, and folks were looking for state support. Republicans didn't want to give it, but Corrine, it's in there. $110 million broken up in a few different ways. And I know that you've only just seen parts of this budget deal, but thanks for joining us. And what are your very first impressions until you learn more?
So I am happy we got $110 million. That is huge. However, the fact that it's only for the first year is decimating, and it's going to be a huge problem next year. And the reason for that is it continues the status quo. So we still are not going to be able to hire teachers. We're not going to be able to raise wages. We are not going to be able to make the improvements that we needed. And that's why we asked for more. And secondly, this money will run out then in June of 2026. The way our legislative calendar runs is that next March, they gavel out to go campaign, which means there is zero chance of us getting any dollars until they come back in January. And it will be facing the exact same thing we are right now, only we'll be more tired. So the few chats I've had this morning with some people is many of them were thinking about retiring for family childcare, and we're going to hold on for like 2-3 more years if we got the funding. However, now that it's only 1 year, they will be done next year. I talked to people who have young children of their own in family childcare, and they were going to try and stick it out and would have stayed. Once their youngest went to school, they will now be done next summer. So all we're doing is pushing it down the road a year.
I wonder if, and I have no information that tells me one way or the other, but I wonder if in doing this, like you noted, they will gavel out probably in March of 2026 and go campaign. But they're going to have to campaign on the issue of childcare funding that just ran out. And I wonder if that actually doesn't increase the pressure that somewhere between next January and next March, they throw another supplemental amount in there. Again, it's not nearly the stability of putting the budget in, but it does seem like an interesting opportunity to pressure some of these lawmakers early next year as well.
Yeah, it would be an interesting opportunity. However, it's been 5 years of this, and we're all really, really tired. I don't know how many of us are just going to decide between now and then we're done, because we can't keep going at this rate, especially if, we work really hard to get people into office that said that they would do these things for us and that they would fight for this. And then to have it be so short-sighted that it ends like with no chance. So the next ask now is to have that standalone legislation passed to get the rest of the money in. And some of the other things that I saw in the press release, some good things, they're increasing the subsidy so that it's up to the legal requirement right now based off of this year's rates. However, when our rates go up, we'll be back in compliance. So they didn't add enough to actually make it go forward to get into compliance and remain in compliance. They did it in order to backfill to then say we're in compliance right now. Another really good thing I saw was that they're going to be adding, in addition to the Young Star bonus for children on subsidy, if you are higher rated, there will also be a separate bonus for children that are infants and toddlers so that we would get a little bit more for them. And that's a good thing because we can't charge enough for those infants and toddlers. And that might help with some of that infant toddler squeeze that we're feeling. So those are some good things I saw. I have a couple questions about the 4K school readiness piece. If it's at the 0.6 full-time equivalent that the schools have, we can't compete with that. If free all-day school, 0.6 for us, parents aren't going to be able to pay us the difference, especially since we're not getting the stabilization funding that we need in order to reduce our tuition. So that's really not probably going to do what's intended to do. I have some major concerns about the ratios changing, pilot programs, and the devil's in the details. I have asked. I got a little bit of clarification from the Department of Children and Families, but they know about what we do. They haven't seen the language, so they don't actually know. Same thing, 16-year-olds counting as a teacher in a classroom is also very, very, very concerning.
Corinne Hendrickson with a first look at reaction to the budget deal that was reached yesterday. Obviously more to learn and then more to react to. But Corinne, thanks for a first pass at it. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Let's get right into it. From the recombobulation area, one Dan Schaefer. Here we are, ready for a day like today. How are you?
I'm doing well. A little discombobulated this morning, but we're piecing things back together, and always wonderful to join you here on Mornings with Pat Kreitlow.
Always nice to have you here as well. For the time that you've had to look at it, what's your own 30,000-foot view of what they have created here? And will it be a case of good enough, or will it be a case of perfect is the enemy of the very good?
Well, you're right. It's there's a lot of information to parse here. And I think one of my big takeaways from this is that I think they are going to require Democratic votes in the state Senate to pass the budget for the first time in, I don't know, more than 15 years now, right? And so with that, as I reported last week on Civic Media, with State Senate Minority Leader Dianne Hesselbein being brought into negotiations, I think that changed the dynamic of the deal being struck in some pretty significant ways. We're seeing, increases for special education reimbursement. We're seeing increases to the UW system, a number of other areas that are being addressed in the budget. And I don't know how much of that would have happened had they not reached a certain level of impasse, and that the Republicans needed some Democratic votes in order to pass the budget in the state Senate. So I do think that is one of the big takeaways here, is that the smaller Republican margins in the state Senate that were achieved in part through the fair maps, in part through a number of tough electoral victories won last fall by people like Jody Habush-Sinekin, who won in a really close race, a number of other state senators, Jamie Wall, Chris Alfheim, and go down the list there to kind of shrink the gap and make this a bill that had input from Senate Democrats, from Tony Evers, and then from legislative Republican leadership as well, and Robin Voss and Devin LeMahieu. So I'm sure there will be plenty of questions, there always are, on anything this big. But I think one of my initial big takeaways is that fair maps, tough elections, leading to a bipartisan compromise in the state Senate. And I think that's a pretty big deal.
All right. Well, let's bring in Senator Jeff Smith now from the Eau Claire County town of Brunswick, joining us here from what appears to be your capital office, Senator.
That's right, Pat. And hey, Dan, thanks for saying that. The good ideas are coming from Democrats. We take a lot of beating these days that we're not fighting back, but considering we aren't in control, the best thing we can do is keep reminding them of what the public really wants.
All right. Well, let's get the 3-minute version of what you think. When did you find out most of the points, and what's your general view of the whole schmear?
Well, we've been getting breadcrumbs, tidbits through the last weekend and through yesterday, and we're going to find out. We haven't yet to see the whole budget. So to tell you the truth, after all these years of lack of trust, I have to see the whole budget to know what's real and what's not. There have been concessions made, or I should say compromises made, and there will be votes coming from Democrats to bail out the Republicans and get this done, because after all, we've got to make sure that we get that hospital funding that is being held over our head by the feds. This has to get done in a timely fashion. Unfortunately, that timely fashion has really passed, and the Republicans have really manipulated this whole system to put us in a bad spot with it, where we have 24 hours to look at a 900-page document and then vote on it.
It's a very good point. And then on top of that, you've got the state Supreme Court ruling on light item vetoes last week that, as I explained last week, has me concerned that the Joint Finance Committee, the Republicans there, can just put immense amounts of cash in their so-called supplemental fund and then micromanage the dollars as they see fit. But until you see the whole bill, you have no idea if there's going to be that funding for Chippewa Valley Healthcare to make up for the hospitals. That is still to be seen one way or the other.
Thanks for bringing that up, because that supplemental funding, we're supposed to trust them at this point that they will release monies for these important pieces like that. I don't anymore. I don't trust them anymore. They've proven themselves to not care and not be willing to release funding when it's needed. So this is a bad way of governing. They obviously can't govern, don't know how to govern, and I'm just telling them, get out of the way, because some of us do know and do care.
And then just a couple of seconds here. Dan Schaefer mentioned it. I just want your quick affirmation on this. Fair maps is what got us a more fair budget, not a great budget, but a fair budget because of fair maps. Yes or no?
It's competitive maps, and yes, it did.
Okay. Senator Jeff Smith from the Eau Claire County town of Brunswick. Thank you, my friend. Good to see you.
Thank you.
So there you go. There's a summary of some of the reaction to the state budget bill, which again passed out of the Joint Finance Committee yesterday with only one no vote. That was from Senator LaTanya Johnson of Milwaukee. It got a yes vote from Senator Kelda Roys of Madison in Joint Finance, but she is not fully committing to voting yes on the bill yet. And I believe you will see a mix of Democrats and Republicans on both sides of that bill. All right, I want to note that we are in the middle of the anniversary of the Battle of Gettysburg during the Civil War of 1863, one of the bloodiest battle in American military history. And that when tens of thousands of Confederate troops crossed the Potomac into Pennsylvania, they were met by 80,000 Union soldiers, including Wisconsin's Iron Brigade. They were in the thick of battle on the first day. The 2nd Infantry lost about a third of its men right from the start, including Colonel Lucius Fairchild. He would later recover from his injuries and the loss of his left arm and be elected governor of Wisconsin right after the war. The village of Fairchild in Eau Claire County is named for him. The 26th Wisconsin Infantry, composed almost entirely of immigrants from Germany, fought throughout the day and lost more than 200 men. The 1st U.S. Sharpshooters, originally organized at Camp Randall, were instrumental in repulsing Confederate attacks, including Pickett's charge on the 3rd day. All told, the state of Wisconsin provided just over 90,000 men for service in the Union Army during the Civil War. Between battle dead and other causes, 12,301 men from Wisconsin died defending this nation. And that would explain why anytime I see a Confederate flag anywhere in this state, I would love to tell them how they can take their flag and their BS about heritage and cram it up someplace I can't talk about on radio. So on this anniversary of Wisconsin's sacrifice in the Civil War, we wanted to say that some of us remember. Today's history lesson is next, as we always do, mornings here on the Civic Media Radio Network.
strangers in the night, exchanging glances, wandering in the night.
See, now that's probably the Frank Sinatra voice you're used to. A few days ago, we played like his debut with the Harry James Orchestra. He sounded a lot younger back then. But this is his Strangers in the Night, which was the #1 song this day in 1966. And it would later win the Oscar for Best Song in a Movie, again, 59 years ago today. I talked about Gettysburg before, but this is also a big anniversary for the American Revolution. It was on this day that the Continental Congress adopted a resolution severing ties with the Kingdom of Great Britain, although the wording of the formal Declaration of Independence was not adopted until July 4th. Sounds very typical of government. We adopt the framework one day. We'll work out the details. It might take a day or two. That's
Get this bill done by July 4th, dang it.
Yes. I don't think the demand was the same back then, but it could be. On this day in 1962, Jimi Hendrix was honorably discharged from the U.S. Army after serving only about a year of his 3-year commitment. The reason for his discharge was unsuitability, as his superiors agreed that he will never be a good soldier, in part because he was more interested in his guitar than his rifle. I guess that paid off.
It's good to be bad at your job sometimes, I guess.
That's exactly it. Winning by losing, you know. Sure. Let's see. The #1 song this day in 1988 was by Michael Jackson.
Hey baby, do as you please. I have the stuff that you want. I am the thing that you need. She looked me deep in the eyes. She touching me so to start. She says there's no turning back. She got me.
This Dirty Dinah made him the first artist to score 5 #1 singles from the same album. This was the 5th #1 single from the album Bad. Born this day in 1908, Thurgood Marshall, the 32nd Solicitor General of the United States, who then became a former Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. First black justice, trailblazer, passed away in 1993. On this day in 1964, as part of the Civil Rights Movement, President Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to prohibit segregation in public places. On this day in 1980, Sheena Easton was featured on a BBC show called The Big Time. She had a big hit 2 months later. So the show she was on, The Big Time, followed regular people trying to achieve their dreams with visions of stardom as a singer. You see her in the show auditioning for EMI, and they were impressed by her voice. And this is the record that came 2 months later.
I did not know when I saw 9 to 5 in our notes here. I was thinking
Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton. Yeah, I was thinking that. And then I heard this. And yes. I only know this song from that episode of Seinfeld.
Do you really? Of course you do. So. Of course you do. Let's see. On this day in 1937, Amelia Earhart and navigator Fred Noonan are last heard from over the Pacific Ocean, attempting to make the first equatorial around the world flight. They were also searching for that Malaysian Air Flight 357 because that's just how it operates. It's in some weird Devil's Triangle space. The first Walmart store opened for business in Rogers, Arkansas on this day in 1962. So happy 63rd birthday to Walmart. Michelle Branch has a birthday today. You know, that nice young singer who had Everywhere. That song was a while ago. She's 42 years old today.
You're always there, 'cause you're
More birthdays. Let's see. We've got actress Margot Robbie is 35 years old today. Lindsay Lohan is 39 years old today. And Larry David is 78 years old today. And now here's something that will always surprise people. I just never got into Curb Your Enthusiasm and Larry David.
I've never seen Curb Your Enthusiasm. Okay. That should be what I watch.
Get that on your list. Get that list out. How big is this list now?
It's probably got like that's about 10 movies or so.
Okay, all right. Today is National. Look at this list. National Lint Awareness Day. I'm aware of lint every time I open the drawer. I don't need a day for this.
I need details.
Yeah.
I need to know why that's a thing.
This is World Sports Journalism Day. And perhaps most notably, and we don't have any tunage for it, but in New Zealand, today is National Disco Day. A salute to all things music, dancing, and the culture of the 1970s. I still love New Zealand anyway. That's fine. And Luke Mathers is on the text line. He is flabbergasted that I did not get into Curb Your Enthusiasm. How do I put this? For the same reason I didn't get deep into Seinfeld. Sometimes you can be funny, but sometimes they're just mean. Sometimes they're just not very nice people. I like nice people who are funny, you know?
Fair enough, I suppose. Yeah.
I'm just saying that's my own quirk. That's my own problem. I own it, you know? So here's Tony on YouTube having fun with the Michelle Branch song. Lint is everywhere to me. When I open my dryer, it looks at me. And then there's a CT8325 on YouTube saying disco rules. And Tony is with me on this. He says, I tried at least 3 times, couldn't do Curb Your Enthusiasm. So, I mean, these are all acquired tastes. You know, Tony is also like me. He didn't get big into Seinfeld either. It doesn't mean when I pop in, I get the things that are funny. You know, I mean,
yeah.
Seinfeld, for example, you know, the one with the bet. That's hilarious. You know? Alicia asking, isn't this Lasagna Awareness Month? Oh my goodness. Could it be?
Interesting.
Oh shoot. Let's see how much let's
like
see how much
idea.
Yeah. See how much
you know
Googling
what day today is, Pat?
What?
It's National I Forgot Day.
Oh, and you're going, oh, did you forget Pigeon Quest? It's Wednesday? No, Melissa K's under the weather. So I know. So we'll have to wait one more week to get an update on Pigeon Quest. Yes, July is Lasagna Awareness Month. We'll mark more about that next week. Time for the news next here on the Civic Media Radio Network. Oh, Alicia catching it. Good job.
Lasagna month.
Well, we spent the whole month with the weird Unsolved Mysteries music because it's Lasagna Awareness Month. So be aware of the lasagna.
The that one song that you hated that we played one day.
Which one? It was either Wonderful Christmas Time by Paul McCartney.
No, one of the bumper songs that Luke picked out was called Lasagna Sunrise, I think was the name of that song.
Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, Paint Bucket. We don't know. We don't know the status of Paint Bucket. Well, Melissa just couldn't make it today. So.
Yeah. She gave us a little bit of an update.
Yeah. So did Greg leave that hot button for the mystery music or whatever?
Mystery music.
Yeah.
Do you mean?
There it is. Be aware of your lasagna, people. Are you using the cooked noodles or the uncooked noodles? Is it all ground beef? Is it ground beef and pork? Be aware. Very aware. All right. We have a guest. We have to mind our manners now. Angela is here. Hi, Angela. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Good. Thank you for checking in. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
So
couldn't find a good background in my hotel, so sorry that it's
no. We get a lot of hotel guests. Totally fine. The pandemic really cured us of all that. Yeah. So since we booked you, this has been an interesting 1-2 development. That it's no longer just the bill, but some good news to report. That I imagine. So we're basically going to start that way, and then I think we'll kind of start with that there's this new agreement. Tell us about it, and then we'll take a step back and say, okay, let's talk about the whole problem and what it is, because people again associate it with Milwaukee and everything else, the bill and what was wrong with it, and then once again come back to more details about what you and Mayor Payne and give credit to whoever else you want to give. We'll go from there, and then after we finish all that, we'll ask your thoughts on the budget. Have you looked at it enough to know what you want to do with it yet?
Yeah, I think so. I'm digging in right now. I was just reading things as I was waiting for the 7 o'clock hour to hit. So after this, I'll go to my office, print it out, and keep digging in. I think I know where I'm headed.
Okay.
Yeah,
We'll ask your thoughts on that as well. So,
okay.
All right. Well, you're good to go. I will put you back in the waiting room, and then we'll get the segment started at 7:06, and I will come get you shortly after that.
Is that when I'm actually like on?
Yeah. Well, you're on Facebook and YouTube right now. They can all see us and hear us, but not on the radio. We're in a commercial break there.
Okay.
And so yeah, when we come back on at 7:06, again, you'll be on the radio as well as Facebook and YouTube.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
All right. See you in a bit. All right. 30 seconds till we come back. And I should have mentioned, Angela, I'm going to tuck you back in the waiting room for the start of the segment because in the waiting room, nobody can see or hear you. So if you want to make noise or whatever, and I'll see you in just a bit.
Live across Wisconsin on Civic Media, you're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. Now, from our Lake Wissota studio, here is the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Kreitlow.
Hey, good morning. It is 7:06. Nice to have you here up north on this Wednesday morning, July 2nd, 2025. Parker Olson's down in Madison in Studio A2. We'll chat with him again in just a little bit. And we have a guest, State Representative Angela Stroud, who will be joining us shortly as well. Brittany Merlot is off today, so keep listening to your favorite Civic Media radio station throughout the day for updates on your local forecast. But let me tell you who else is coming up along the network today. Coming up after this fine program is a finer program, Matinaire on Air with Jane Matinaire and Greg Bach. Dan Schaefer will be appearing there at 9:30 this morning to talk about the state budget agreement. A little after 10 a.m., they will be joined by Darren Von Ruden, president of the Wisconsin Farmers Union. Do you remember the Oprah Winfrey joke? Was it Dave Letterman that told it when he was hosting the Oscars and talking about Uma Thurman? Oprah, Uma, Oprah. That's kind of me with Darren Von Ruden and Derek Van Orden. You don't want to get those two confused. They could not be more opposite in their one is actually dedicated to farmers and improving the rural economy of Wisconsin. The other's a member of Congress. On the Todd Alba Show, I will join Todd at 2 o'clock along with Trigg Olson from the Lincoln Project. And then the Maggie Dawn Show, a special edition at 4 o'clock today called Freedom Under Attack, including guests David Volker, a UW Green Bay professor of humanities and history, Howard Schweber, a UW professor of American politics and political theory, and at 5:06, Kathy Kramer, UW professor and chair of letters and science in American politics. And then finally, Nightlight with Pete Schwaba from 6 to 8 tonight includes a visit with Milwaukee film critic Matt Mueller and director Wendy Schneider. All of that ahead across the Civic Media Radio Network. Brewers were rained out yesterday, so there is a doubleheader today. 2 games with the New York Mets, and it's a split doubleheader. So tune in at 11:35 this morning for pregame for the makeup game, game 1 of the series with the Mets, and then 5:35 tonight for game 2 when Jacob Mizorowski will be pitching. Freddie Peralta is doing the opening game, again pregame at 11:35. When we originally booked State Representative Angela Stroud from the Ashland area, it was because she had to vote no on a bill that was purportedly going to help with the removal of lead water service lines in the Superior area, but there were strings attached. Since that time, since we booked her as a guest, there have been some very positive developments in that area, and so we're very happy to welcome Angela to the program now to tell us what's the latest in Superior. We'll talk about the whole range of the problem and the different ways you could address it, and hopefully a way that works out best for all parties concerned. Angela Stroud, how are you? Good morning.
I'm well, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So that's kind of, the setup was there was this bill and you weren't thoroughly happy with it, but what has happened, since the bill was being considered in the legislature?
Yeah, so this bill would change state law to give the last private water utility, Superior Water, Light and Power, access to public money to replace lead service lines. And the way that the Republicans who introduced the legislation seem to think about it is, let's just change state law and no big deal. For me, it's a really big deal when we change state law, especially giving a for-profit private company access to public dollars. So my thinking the whole time was, well, what's in it for the customers of Superior? How do we get the best deal possible for them? And I had some concerns. So one of my biggest concerns was the cost of replacement. The company was citing an average cost of replacement that was twice the statewide average. And even though they would get access to public money, customers would still be left with 25% of that cost. So when you have what seemed to be an inflated cost, then the remainder is passed on to customers, and we're giving public money to a private company. It just wasn't good enough. We needed something in return, a better deal. And so for the last few months, I've been working really hard to try to figure out a deal between the company and the city of Superior. And we didn't have a deal when the bill went to the floor. So I was a no vote. And until we got a deal, I was going to stay a no. And I was going to encourage the governor to veto it. But on one of the last possible days, we got a deal.
Yes, you did. And did not, just accept what was given to you in the form of a bill, because I'm sure you're aware, voting no on a bill that purports to help your own constituents, whether we like it or not, that's something that people from the opposing party would try to use as a club and beat you over the head with it. She voted no against removing lead water lines in her own district, but you were looking for a better deal. And so you feel now that this agreement that goes along with it, I guess when I say how did that go, did you find willing participants? Was it a smooth process? Who all deserves credit for making this happen?
Yeah, so on the first point, it's clear that there were political dynamics at play about trying to target me. And so we can dig into that if you want. But to the good news, what really happened was, the city and the utility, they have a long history, way before any of us were born. But the current leadership, they've had some things happen where there wasn't a whole lot of trust. And so there was an interest in getting the bill from the utility. And the city, as I engaged more and more with the city, they started to sort of come around to the idea that there could be a benefit for the city as well. So my job really was to try to get these two entities who weren't really on great terms to build trust and get to a place where they could both see the win-win. And so I spent a lot of time with both parties, really kind of talking through how I saw the issue, how I saw the benefits, listening to them, trying to address some of their concerns. And, that took time, but now I think trust has been built and a relationship has formed and a partnership has formed. And really who wins are the people in the city of Superior who now don't have an average out-of-pocket cost of $2,500 each. So for me, that's a huge win. And we turned a real potential sort of liability into something that is a massive benefit for the city.
Were the Republicans who were behind the bill that was eventually passed and signed, would they count among the willing partners in negotiating a better deal for homeowners, or were they just hoping the law would be signed and that would be it?
I honestly don't think they had any idea about any of it. I don't think they knew what the implications were for the public. I don't think they knew, for example, that the city has an interest in acquiring the utility. I don't know if they knew that the city council voted down a proposal of support for the bill. There's just so much that goes into a change like this. But to be a good representative, you have to be on the ground asking questions and, most importantly, listening. And it was just very clear to me they weren't aware of any of the dynamics. They just thought, well, this is simple. Let's change this law and give the company access to money. I don't think, we should ever act that way when we're changing state law, and especially when we're talking about giving public money to a for-profit company.
Yeah, I mean, there is a real difference in whether your representative or state senator is on the ground in that particular area. We're talking to State Representative Angela Stroud from the 73rd Assembly District in that area, where you and all matter of other legislators will be looking at this new state budget agreement. And I want to ask you about that, but actually, before I forget, I did want to come back and ask about the history of all of this, because I know Earl Ingram in Milwaukee reminds us about this all the time. When we talk about lead water service lines, so many people think of it as some kind of Milwaukee-only problem. And this whole episode really serves to remind us that there are places all over the state where this is an issue. I had no idea it was this big of an issue in Superior until this came up.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about the new maps and more diverse representation around the state is we need to realize that in a lot of ways, my district has more in common with Milwaukee than with other parts of the state, and certainly more in common with Milwaukee than suburban areas. Because I really think the distinction isn't urban versus rural. I think it's urban and rural versus the suburbs, because the suburbs are new construction, which, no surprise, our entire shared revenue formula is about new construction. They get tons of resources, tons of advantages. But these older cities, and that's really what this is about, older cities with old infrastructure, and in some cases, shrinking populations, another thing that Milwaukee and my district have in common, we have different challenges. So, Ashland and Superior, these are really, really old cities. And as a result, we need infusions of dollars to replace infrastructure of all kinds, including lead lines. And this brings me up another point, though, taking money from this public pool, that's serious business, because we're taking from cities like Milwaukee or other cities. And so that's just another reason to tread carefully in a decision like this and not to treat it like it's just something simplistic.
That's right. Alicia writes on YouTube, let's get this one here. We've got the lead water service lines in Kimberly as well. And again, you've got in Superior and Milwaukee, you've got these ports on Great Lakes with the infrastructure that is, tied into that to a degree, in past history. And it's good to be mindful of, the whole range of the problem before you just immediately accept what is given to you by, say, the private sector. So again, getting back to my next question of you having to meet with the full assembly and consider the state budget deal, and I've been going over all the details of it. It is most definitely going to get a wide array of Democrats for and against and Republicans for and against. Probably going to be the most bipartisan, the raw bipartisan vote on a budget we've seen in a long time. How are you feeling about it right now?
I'm still digging in. I mean, unfortunately, this process has been totally rushed. This isn't how we should do good government. The party of chaos continues to be the party of chaos, forcing really just bad governance practices. So, I'm up early in part, not just for this, but because I'm still digging into the budget. I have super big concerns about public school funding in particular. I mean, by not raising general aid, what we're doing is putting more pressure on property taxes yet again. So it's kind of crazy to me that we would be touting that this budget has tax cuts at the same time that by refusing to raise general aid for schools, local school districts are going to have to raise property taxes to meet their levy. So a tax cut in one pocket and then raising taxes in the other pocket, really we have to ask what is the net benefit and to whom? And for working and middle class people, it's not actually going to net out to a tax cut or to a benefit. And meanwhile, schools are the ones who are going to be blamed for having to raise their revenues through property taxes. So yet again, the state legislature is failing to meet the needs of public schools. And it's just super disappointing that we're having this conversation yet again.
So you think that the conversations will continue for folks who think that this budget just didn't go far enough to urge Governor Evers to just veto the whole thing, even though he worked out the deal. But there are people that would still like to just scrap this and try again.
I mean, that would be my position. That is my position, that we shouldn't do that. We shouldn't sign a bill into law that actually harms communities. I mean, it's really hard to undo 15 years of neglect of public schools in one budget. I understand that. But by refusing to increase general aid, we're just contributing to the problem yet again. So yeah, there is a small increase in special ed. That's huge. That's helpful. But you have to think about public school budgets as multifaceted. It's not just one thing. And when you have a big problem, it takes big solutions, not just fixing one part of the problem.
We are talking to State Representative Angela Stroud from the Ashland area, 73rd Assembly District, about things that are happening up there. A local update is coming up next for some of you, and then when we're all back together in 15 minutes, we will be talking to a retired pediatric nurse and school board member about her letter to the WIAA critical of their new restrictions on transgender sports participation. So stick around for that. And then in our next hour, we will be talking to Earl Ingram and Melissa Baldoff with our climate check. From the heart of America's up north, live from Lake Wissota, thanks for making this the place to spend part of your mornings. I'm Pat Kreitlow. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. Okay, we're on a break here. Angela, can you stick around or do you need to head off?
Yeah, I've got until 7:30 and then I'll head to my office.
Okay, sounds good. Other things that you're going to be working on now that the budget's done?
I'm going to be working on spending a little time on the lake.
Good. That's the right answer. Good.
And then we'll get back to work after a little break.
Yes.
It's been a pretty intense 6 months, so everybody needs a little break.
Yeah, no doubt there. Let's see let's see what's in the comments here. Tony stirring the pot. Did you talk to Romaine Quinn? It was a completely different opinion. Can you explain why he's wrong?
I'd be happy to.
That would be Tony. Tony also noting Angela works early, not like some politicians that aren't morning people. That's because in the Northwoods we work hard always. Hey, that's a shot at my friend Jody Emerson. Only I get to take shots at my friend Jody Emerson, who would sleep till noon if you let her. So
hey, you can work in the morning, you can work at night. As long as you're working, I don't care.
Yes, that's true. That's what definitely gets done here. Let's see. Robin Tigerton, we'll get to your stuff here as well. And so let's see. We come back in 1 minute and 15 seconds. So I'll put you back in the waiting room for a bit if you need to make some noise, slurp some coffee, whatever, and I'll be right back for you.
Okay.
Actually, Angela, before I forget, it's not a happy topic, but do you mind if I ask you how things are up there since the closure of Northland?
Sure, of course.
Okay, all right, sounds good. All right, 30 seconds. Alicia, you get it. Thank you. All right, Brittany Merlot is off today, but Robin Tigerton, he does not take a day off. Good morning from Tigerton, he writes on YouTube. It's sunny and 65 degrees. Yesterday, I mowed 7 yards in Tigerton. One of my customers gave me a sub sandwich and a bottle of Gatorade. Today, I have mowing jobs in Wittenberg I'm scheduled to be doing tomorrow, so I don't have to mow on the 4th of July. It is going to be a hot one on the 4th of July. He said yesterday he was going to have lasagna, but one of his customers gave me a sub sandwich, which was better on a warm day. It is, in fact, Lasagna Awareness Month, and we'll probably talk about that tomorrow. And he mentions a day-night doubleheader, something you don't often see in Major League Baseball nowadays. There was a time when they played a lot of doubleheaders, especially on Sundays. Yeah, I remember those very well. I loved bonus baseball that way. But instead, the bonus baseball comes accidentally, like it does today. Brewers and Mets, after last night's game was rained out. 11:35 this morning for the pregame on Game 1. Freddie Peralta will be pitching for the Brewers versus the Mets. And then come on back at 5:35 this evening for Game 2, and that will be Jacob Mizorowski pitching for the Brewers against the Mets, all here on stations belonging to the Civic Media Radio Network. Let's continue now with State Representative Angela Stroud from the Ashland area, so that leads me, I'm going to ask about the Northland College closing in a moment here, but it also notes in your bio that you have described as a very antisocial rescue border collie named May, the cutest dog of all time. What's the update since the election and all the campaigning? Any less antisocial?
No, she still will destroy anyone who tries to come up our driveway. No. But she's so sweet once she knows you and feels comfortable that you're not an intruder, then she's great. So yeah, the one thing is every time I pack a suitcase, she knows what's happening and she's not happy about it. So that's been hard. Being away from the dog has been a hard part of this job.
And you make the big drive from Ashland down to Madison for this. Yeah. Who was I? I was serving with Gary Sherman from Port Wing for all those years, talking about those drives, and they are not easy. Wouldn't it be great if we had a train system in this state? But
God, I'd love it.
It's a whole different thing. So with the closing of Northland College up there and you and all the other educators up there who have been part of the community, I don't have any happy way to ask this, just to ask how the community has been in the weeks since the closure.
When a college closes for summer, it feels kind of like normal. But the difference is, the grass is getting a little taller, and we all know that people aren't coming back for the first time in 132 years. So it's challenging. It's difficult. We have a core group of people who are trying to figure out uses for the campus. There's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm about that idea. There continues to be a bit unclear what the board is thinking in terms of how they're going to move forward with the campus. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but there's a lot of potential still. And, one of the things I've been trying to do is help figure out how to transform this into an opportunity that could be great for the community.
Mm-hmm. There's a theme that you sounded, and that was sounded yesterday as well when it came to the budget deal that folks will be voting on today. And that is that this whole notion of fair maps led us to a fair budget. Not a great budget, maybe not even a very good budget, but a fair budget, which would not have happened without fair maps. And I mean, you can truly testify to that in an area where the last set of rigged maps meant that in a heavily Democratic area along the south shore of Lake Superior there was no Democratic district, no Democratic representation there. You've been in office now for 6 months or so. How different does it feel for your constituents up there to have a voice again?
They're so happy. They're so happy. I mean, if you look at, national elections, if you look at the last presidential going back decades, you'll see Douglas County, Bayfield County, Ashland County, they always go blue. And in Bayfield County, it's not even close. So the idea that there wasn't a single state representative north of Eau Claire prior to these new maps just shows the degree of gerrymandering. And, there's some spiteful Republicans who say this map is gerrymandered. Depending on how you carve it up, we could have more than one Democrat up here. And that would be considered fair, depending on how you drew the boundaries. I happen to love the shape of my district, South Shore of Lake Superior. There's a real logic to that. We have a lot in common when you think about the Lake Shore. So I hope the shape of my district never changes. I love the city of Superior all the way to the Bad River Reservation. But I understand if it were to change, to make sure that Democratic representation reflects the actual distribution of the population. That's not a crazy concept. That's exactly what we should have in a democracy. But my constituents, I should show you some emails I get. They are just so pleased to have someone who's really representing them and who's spending a lot of time in the district trying to understand their perspective and then fight in Madison for what they need.
Oh, I know. And not to reminisce too much, but I mean, when, my first year career was at a radio station in Rice Lake, and the brand new legislators in that area were Bob Jauk and Mary Hubler. And I started this talk show in Rice Lake, and they were among my most frequent guests because they were brand new legislators themselves and wanted to, have a voice all over the district that would serve. And of course, you got, as I mentioned, Gary Sherman and Janet Bewley and all kinds of folks who, shall we say, quite fairly represented, the wide range of the areas there, and did so fairly and with a true sense of service. So budget will probably wrap up this week. What's your first order of business when it's all done?
Getting on the boat and being on Lake Superior. 4th of July, that's what I plan to do.
That is the correct answer. Yes, you are really good at this. You have simply got to unplug now and then, especially after what you managed to do to help out the homeowners in Superior, removing their lead water service lines. State Representative Angela Stroud, thank you so much for the visit. We really appreciate it. Thanks for all you do.
Anytime. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you. And when we come back, we will talk about the WIAA and its transgender policy on sports participation in Wisconsin high schools, and then have much more in our 8 o'clock hour, including our climate check with Melissa Baldoff. A reminder, you can sign up for our newsletters at Up North News. Just head over to upnorthnewswi.com and click on subscribe up in the top banner of the homepage. We'd love to have you as a subscriber there. More coming up right after this break and the Midwest Farm Report. You're Up North. Okay, let's see. Here's Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. How are you?
Hello. I'm good. Just hanging in here right now.
Well, good. Well, thank you for joining us here. We're in a radio station commercial break, but folks watching on Facebook and YouTube can see and hear us right now. Carolyn, can you pronounce your last name for me?
Bonanno.
Bonanno. Okay. And And again, I have your letter in front of me, and just thought this would be a good experience to talk about. So I'll first be asking you, what the policy is that you wanted to comment on, and then we'll get into your reaction to it, if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, Carolyn, thank you so much. And again, you're in. What city are you in here?
Baraboo.
You are in there. Ed, scroll down to the bottom there, and you're on the Baraboo School Board, but you are speaking as in your own personal capacity.
Right.
And a retired pediatric nurse, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. The segment will get going in 2 minutes, so I will put you back in the waiting room. Nobody will be able to see or hear you there, and I'll come get you when we get started.
Okay.
Thanks, Carolyn. .35 now on these mornings, powered by Up North News on the Civic Media Radio Network. On the text line, Tom in Hartford. Another great guest, Pat. It's uplifting to hear an intelligent, caring representative. Ain't it, though? It's just nice and refreshing when you get that compared to some of the things that you see out there in the news cycle. This is going to be a big day in Madison, not just because the legislature's meeting on the budget, but the Wisconsin Supreme Court has announced that today it will release its decision on its interpretation of an 1849 statute that some had purported to be an abortion ban. Others interpreted it as doing something else about protecting pregnant women. The law has been on hold since a Dane County judge ruled, I believe in the fall of 2023, that the law did not apply to consensual abortions. It was appealed to the state Supreme Court, and the state Supreme Court heard oral arguments in the case last November and is now ready to issue its ruling. And so that will come sometime today. So keep it tuned to your favorite shows across the Civic Media Radio Network to learn more. Let's turn now to a matter in our schools about participation in sports and other activities, and especially as it relates to members of the transgender community. That we're going to meet with a guest from the Baraboo area who is a retired pediatric nurse, sits on the school board, but is going to join us in a private capacity, and wrote a letter to the WIAA expressing concerns about a policy that restricts transgender student athletes to participate only in the sports categories corresponding to their sex assigned at birth. So let's learn more about that and what perhaps might be a better way forward with Carolyn Bonanno, who joins us now from Baraboo. Carolyn, good morning. Thank you for being here. How are you?
I'm good. It's frustrated, but good.
It does sound frustrating. You note in your letter to the members of the board of the Wisconsin Interscholastic Activities Association that their policy fails to account for current scientific understanding and may not serve the best interests of all student athletes. And you say this as a retired registered pediatric nurse and somebody who has certainly followed school matters carefully on school boards. So can you talk a bit more about, what prompted the letter and then, basically your overview of the policies that prompted the letter?
Because I am on a board and I learned about this and I had been hearing rumblings and I always heard that, well, this isn't true, that it's not scientifically sound. And so I decided to do some of my own research because facts seem to be able to speak louder than feelings. And I think it's important. So I looked it up and I tried to find things that said that transgender women had an ability over other female athletes. And there was very little evidence to that at all. And as my brother said to me the other day, this whole thing, it just seems to be a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. And I think that it puts our most vulnerable students at higher risk. And so I just felt it was so wrong. And it's kind of like the first steps to dictatorship. If this happened immediately after Trump wrote his letter, his executive order banning transgender females, and this only and WIAA's policy only refers to transgender females. It doesn't look at anything else. I don't think they did any research whatsoever. They just followed along. They were in lockstep.
Yeah, it does have very much the sense of just a bit of political backlash, if you will, to things like legalizing same-sex marriage. Then there's let's find a new category of people to bash. You write that current research indicates that athletic performance differences are more complex than a simple binary categorization of assigned sex at birth, and that athletic performance varies enormously among individuals within any gender category. And that really gets to one of the things that has really stuck with me is this ridiculous sense that somebody, a minor or an adult, would go through what you need to go through just to win a race. I mean, I thought it was silly on its face, but I mean, like you said, you had to look into the fact based of it to say between individual variations and simple binary categorization, there's a lot more to this than the surface talking points.
Yes, and it kind of boggles the mind as to why people would think that this is true. I mean, one of my first experiences as a school board member, I've only been on for about a year, a little over a year, was sitting down on a summer learning symposium at a table with a gentleman who was trying to push his facts through and saying things. We can't have these big guys competing against women. And I just looked at him and said, I don't think that's true. And I ended up leaving the table. And at WASB, the Wisconsin Association of School Board, has always, this person has been trying to put through policies to change it on a school board level, and WASB has declined, and we as school board members have declined this. So it boggles my mind that WIAA can have this much power. It bothers me. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I mean, there's still a lot to learn about these kind of things. And at best, it should be an individual categorization.
Right. And they are not the only body that is working with this issue. And you note that the International Olympic Committee and other sports bodies have recognized that it's not about transition per se, but the timing of it, particularly where it occurs, in terms of puberty. And certainly we're talking about things like testosterone levels, not simply the fact that there's been a transition or treatment, but again, time, testosterone, a whole lot of other factors that the International Olympic Committee is trying to be cognizant of. And you're concerned that the WIAA is being a little too simplistic about this, I think.
Very. And their policy was just very simplistic. There was no whys or wherefores about it. It was just a very simple statement saying this is the way it is. And I don't think they gave it any thought whatsoever. And it just seems punitive to me and dictatorial. So like I said, I did the research. The timing is important. And the thing is we don't know what's going on in anybody's mind or head or physical things. And it is something that you need to consider personally. I think they're pandering toward the fears of other people who don't have an understanding of what's going on. And frankly, why do we care? I mean, it's really small numbers, and it's important.
Really
small. Really small.
and it just, again, it provides opportunity for talking points, but also, as you note, privacy violations. The current policy, you write, forces families to engage in legal proceedings to secure their children's right to participate, which inherently compromises student privacy. It exposes personal medical information and gender identity status in public legal proceedings, violating the fundamental privacy that all students deserve. Or to put it a bit more crassly, but it certainly has been, so I'm not saying anything that hasn't been said before, the fact that some people want to do this is going to mean that a whole lot of other kids are going to be traumatized by either a coach, a school official, a lawyer, somebody that's they're going to want to look down a kid's pants. What the heck is this?
And they actually, when I was meeting with some legislators in aid, said that to me, that a representative said that. Well, just check them. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, and as my daughter says to me, she says, Mom, it's weird that these people care so much about children's privates.
Yes.
It's weird.
It is weird, and it hasn't been said nearly enough, but it just is. So let's try to look forward on this, and we're talking to Carolyn Bonanno from Baraboo about this letter she wrote to the WIAA, and you asked the board to consider several things. You write, for example, developing individualized assessment protocols that consider factors such as hormone therapy duration, individual athletic metrics, consulting with medical professionals, sports scientists, LGBTQ plus advocacy groups, and review policies from other states and organizations that have developed more nuanced approaches. I think that's the key word there, is nuanced or individualized or consulting. All of these things sound like best practices moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what the world of medicine is, best practices. It is evidence-based, and that should be how everything is. Things should be based on evidence, on what is least destructive or hurtful to other people, and if it's even a necessary thing. You have to look at these things. You don't just willy-nilly. This is how dictatorships happen. Yeah. People just fall in line, and nobody says anything. So I felt it was important to say something.
And so you urge them to refocus the WIAA's mission on supporting and including all student athletes rather than operating as a restrictive enforcement body, return to the core educational mission of fostering student development through athletics rather than creating barriers that force families to choose between their children's privacy and their right to participate in school activities. So that was the note. The letter was dated May 22nd. Has there been any response or reaction since then?
No.
Nothing.
I emailed the members individually, and I sent this letter, and I have not heard a thing back.
And it sounds like there's no current plans to reconsider or do anything else on the issue?
No.
On the comment sections here from CT, the ban on transgendered student athletes buys into the notion that women are inherently weaker than men, which is ridiculous. And Alicia notes that policies like this do way more harm than good. And I mean, none of this strikes me as so unwieldy that you can't consider a better path forward.
Exactly. But I think that because of the current political-ish system, we have somebody who thinks that he can just tell people what to do without any backlash, and whether you have it or not, he will just do what he wants. And it seems like the WIAA just fell in line. And unfortunately, and it's bothersome to me. I'm sorry. It's bothersome to me because I thought that the school boards we're supposed to give guidance to the WIAA, and it doesn't seem to be that way. It seems to be the other way around.
Well, it does. And when you talk about one individual, it certainly is about more than just, say, who is president. You have, Assembly Speaker Robin Voss, who has held up millions and millions of dollars in UW funding to attack diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think, again, I'm projecting, but I wouldn't be surprised if WIAA board members were mindful of that and didn't want the Speaker of the Assembly threatening to cut off funds for high school sports and, being focused on state budgets and school district budgets instead of the welfare of our kids is a hell of a way to run the state.
Exactly. And it seems to be backwards in my estimation, but
well, it certainly does, and that's why I really appreciated your willingness to come on and talk about the note that you sent. I hope you keep us updated, Carolyn Bonanno, as far as whether you get any kind of a response and any possible path forward. Carolyn, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. A local update is coming up next for some of you, and then in our next hour, we will be talking to Earl Ingram about things happening in the Milwaukee area. We will also have Jimmy Kuska coming up next for some of you, talking about what he's seen from Southwest Wisconsin, and then an hour later, James Kelly from Northwest Wisconsin, doing the same thing as we do here, mornings, powered by Up North News, across the Civic Media Radio Network. Well, Jimmy, we sure know how to give you a lead in, don't we?
Well, that's a very awesome segment you just did, because I remember during the annual meeting this year, Savannah Tomei Olson and I sent her the clip of Jeremy Schlitz talking about it and had a very strong argument against the policy. I still have the clip if for whatever reason you wanted it. But it was one of those things where essentially, when the changes to Title IX happened, for most school boards, it was a matter of just saying, okay, well, we have to just go along with it because it's Title IX and we don't want to risk federal funding. So I know as a school board member, we literally it's like checking the box, like every year you do the Title IX training and stuff like that. That's what happened with school boards. It's what happened with UW, because I'm a UW employee. So, it's pretty crazy how this is all come about so quickly.
It really is, yeah. Okay, I got your note here on the budget. I've highlighted the Prairie Spring Science Center at UW La Crosse and demolish Crawley Hall, Blackhawk Bridge, and City of La Crosse. So that'll be some stuff. I mean, I could ask you about the Buck stuff if you're up to speed on it, because I know nothing.
Absolutely, yeah, I'm definitely up to speed on it because.
Excellent. All right, we got that too, because we won't have Clemens on because we won't be here on Friday. So
whatever you need, man, I'm here.
Do that. All right, appreciate that very much. All right, back at you in just over 90 seconds. If you know anything about baseball, you know the concept of a utility player who can play a whole bunch of different positions at ease and is not just capable, but comprehensive in those positions. That brings up Jimmy Kuska, who joins us now, because we are going to talk about we are all over the board in this particular segment. Jimmy, good morning.
Morning.
Well,
I honestly thought you were talking about Anthony Stigler. So
we are going to get to the Milwaukee Bucks. We are going to get to the state budget, but because of the work that you do with sports as well as you've been on a school board, you've been a coach, you're very aware of what the WIAA is doing. So I wanted to give you any opportunity on our last discussion there on the transgender participation policy from the WIAA to give your own insights as to what you've seen being discussed and what the state of things is right now.
Well, I could say that, as someone who follows high school sports, that this was actually brought up during the open session of this April's annual meeting. MMSD, Madison Athletic Director Jeremy Schlitz actually had a nearly 5-minute statement on trying to reverse the policy. And I mean, he hit on all the things that you talked about in the last segment about, what this is doing and targeting certain student athletes and just how quickly the policy came about without a whole lot of discussion, things like that. It's a terrific watch. If you can watch it for free on the NFHS website through the WIAA. If you watch the annual meeting, we've covered it here at Civic Media, of course, as well. But it was a really fascinating statement from a school board perspective. Anytime there's any change to things like Title IX, things like that, just in the vein of not wanting to risk losing that bit of federal funding that schools get. It's not a big part of the budget, but in the age of school funding being what it is, any loss in funding would be pretty huge. That's why when the Department of Education talks about eliminating things like title funding, it's huge because that's positions, that's services for students. When we get things like a Title IX update, it's mostly a check the box board vote to go along with whatever it says, right? So as a school board member, there's not a whole lot of discussion you have on it. There's not a lot of local control on a thing like that. But I really do appreciate having that discussion because those sorts of policies that seemingly target just a handful of individuals, like those are pretty important. So.
Yeah, worthy of ongoing discussion here. Let's turn to the state budget, where the agreement does include $194 million for UW La Crosse to construct the Prairie Springs Science Center and demolish Crowley Hall, which, this is alarming, lacks fire suppression, something Earl Ingram and I have talked about in the past with apartment buildings, but this is a dorm. Failing mechanical systems and so forth. The expansion will support STEM education and workforce development. These are always political footballs in terms of you can only say yes to so many things in any given budget, but this is a pretty nice win for UWL.
Yeah, last budget cycle was UW-Madison and UW-Whitewater getting some capital projects, right? This time it happens to be UW-La Crosse and a handful of other projects around the state where you have these, multi-million-dollar capital projects, these building projects. Eau Claire had one. These are part of the budget process because they are big price tags to take to do these things. So yeah, for La Crosse, UW-La Crosse, this is the latest in a line of these projects that have been kicked. The can's been kicked down the road enough times that it just has to be addressed. And this isn't. You talk about lack of fire suppression, things like things in the crumbling infrastructure of some of these buildings. I guarantee if you take a closer look, there's many more examples of things like this in the UW system.
Hey, Pat, you muted yourself.
No, I didn't. I did. See
I didn't
what happens when you take.
I was trying to read lips, but it was tough.
You take that slurp of coffee and you just try to be polite, and then boom. I was saying before I so rudely interrupted myself by muting myself that we'll try to get to a couple of news notes if time allows, but I do want to get to all of these changes on the Milwaukee Bucks roster because I don't follow them closely. I just know that from the championship team, there's Giannis and Bobby. And what I'm seeing is that's pretty much it, that there's been quite the turnover. What can you tell us about all of yesterday's moves?
So everything has really been done in just kind of an all-in effort to update the roster to contend this year. There's some talk about hanging on with Damian Lillard, waiting to see what happens after his injury, and taking what essentially would be a gap year where the Bucks just let Giannis run wild and hope for the best this year. Well, that's not been the MO of John Horst and the Bucs front office. They have made a lot of creative moves and a lot of what some people are calling desperation moves to stay in contention. But when you look at the end result of everything that happened yesterday, the Bucs got a lot younger and they put themselves in a position to begin to work to contend right now. There's probably still a move or two away from being a true title contender. But if you look at the Eastern Conference, the representative in the NBA Finals, they don't have Tyrese Halliburton, the Oshkosh North native, tore his Achilles. So he's not going to be available for most of the year. And one of their other top pieces, Miles Turner, well, he's now a Milwaukee Buck. So the Eastern Conference still has some good teams, but you look at it, it's not like there's some juggernaut that you have to overcome. So for the Bucs, it was a matter of making moves to be in a better position to contend right away without completely mortgaging the future. When you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, you have a shot, right? So you got to build around him and give yourself a shot to win. That's what everything that happened yesterday was all about.
So are Indiana Pacers fans kind of pulling their hair out at losing a player like Miles Turner to the Bucs?
He wanted to stay there with Indiana, but they got lowballed. So the Bucs swooped in and they pick up a great center to pair with Giannis going forward.
All right. And let's get back to one other news note. The Blackhawk Bridge, you say here, is going to stay open all summer. What's the background on that?
So this is a 94-year-old bridge that connects Crawford County, Wisconsin, near DeSoto to Lansing, Iowa. There's a bridge that's replacing it being constructed alongside of it. And in the last year, that 94-year-old bridge has been closed twice for emergency repairs. So this bridge was slated to be closed later this year after July 4th. And the Iowa DOT yesterday said now they're going to hold off till the end of the summer. It has frustrated people on both sides of the river, business owners especially, because, that uncertain date in the future of when it'll close is going to affect them. But it is good news if you're someone traveling this summer, as now you don't have to detour north to La Crosse or south to Prairie du Chien.
I told you Jimmy Kuska was the utility player for Civic Media, and there he goes, proving it again. Jimmy, thank you so much. Have a great 4th of July holiday. We'll talk to you next week.
You too, man. Take care.
All right. Coming up in our 8 o'clock hour, Earl Ingram and Melissa Baldoff. And remember, you can follow my team from Up North News all day long through our newsletters, social media, website, and, of course, here mornings on the Civic Media Radio Network. All right. Thank you, Jimmy, so much. Appreciate it.
Hey, I appreciate you guys. Basketball's got a wonderful 4th of July celebration. So that I live on the parade route. I got a whole block of it that I got to go get ready for this week. So it's a great celebration here. I appreciate you guys. And I did send you the clip from the annual meeting in case you want to look it over if you come back to that discussion at some point.
Right.
I think he raised a lot of really good points in it. So it's in your inbox.
All right. Perfect.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
man.
much. All right. See ya.
Take care, man. Bye.
Have a good one.
Hey, Earl, good morning. Good morning, Earl. Are you there? Well, let's see. Earl, you're frozen up here.
I noticed that earlier when he was just sitting down there.
Oh, okay.
He was frozen. That was a different screen, though, so it must be going in and out.
All right. Well, let's give Earl a minute.
Is
to
this
see
on
if,
my end?
Oh, it could be. Here, do this, Earl. Hit
Having
stop
trouble,
camera.
Mrs. Austin.
Yeah, hit stop camera, and let's open up some bandwidth and see if audio only will work any better for you once you hit stop camera. There we go.
All right.
All right, there. We got you back. I think so. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, hearing you fine. And if it breaks up again like that, just hit stop your camera, and we'll just do audio only if need be. But
Okay.
What you got going on today?
Well, actually, the horrific killing of Officer Corder.
Okay.
And just a unnecessary, ridiculous situation, chain of events that led to that shooting. It's really taken the wind out of the sails of many people in the city of Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Officer Corder was a beloved young officer, and doesn't matter whether it was somebody who was as beloved as this gentleman was, or any other thing, but just the senseless chain of events that led to his and then it's the Josh Call joining with multiple lawsuits against the U.S. Department of Education for cutting these grants $10 million that would, support mental health, problems in public schools is just, unbelievable. And then the reason that it happened and why and the story behind it. And then I just heard you, talk about the Bucks, and I had something I want to weigh in on that as well.
Oh, sure. Nope. Happy to have you do that. Okay. Good deal. Let's see what else I've got here. I think that's good for the moment. Have you been out to either Summerfest or anything else lately?
No, I stopped. Summerfest is a lot of work, and
Yep.
I'm just, and it happens during the late evenings, and I'm not
Yeah.
anymore a guy who hangs out late. I get up early every day, and so I don't fit in the Summerfest.
No, and that's usually us. But since we think we're going to try to go on the 4th of July, so on a holiday, instead of sleeping in, we're going to get up at our usual 4 a.m. and hit the road to Milwaukee so that we can spend some time down there because it's been a long time, and we're really excited to see the Summerfest grounds again. So I hope that things go well on the 4th for that to happen. So
yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. And are you doing anything special yourself over the 4th?
I'm bringing my family over. I've got a brother who is stage 4 cancer, and I've got another brother who is, been paralyzed over the last 4 years, and I'm going to bring all of them together. We never know if tomorrow's going to be the last day, so I'm making sure that my family is together and celebrating.
That is awesome. All right. Sounds good. We've got 90 seconds till we come back. I'll come get you in a bit.
All right.
Live across Wisconsin on Civic Media, you're listening to Mornings with Pat Kreitlow, powered by Up North News. Now, from our Lake Wissota studio, here is the founding editor of Up North News, Pat Kreitlow.
And good morning, 8:06 on this Wednesday morning, July 2nd, 2025. Nice to have you here up north. Parker Olson over in Madison Studio A2. Earl Ingram is standing by. We'll have Melissa Baldoff a little later this hour with Climate Check. All about keeping the cows comfy and cool while still having solar farms going up around Wisconsin. We'll tell you how they can actually accomplish both things. Brittany Merlot is off today, so keep an ear, I guess I should say, on your local Civic Media station for your local forecast as we head through the end of the week. We will have a regular show tomorrow, and then on Friday we'll have a best of show. And we didn't get to hear from Melissa Kay today, but if you have not caught up with Pigeon Quest with Melissa Kay, you're going to want to listen to Friday's show as we recap what has brought us to the point of her almost having possession of a rescue pigeon that she wants to adopt. From the text line, Jim in Brookfield, another good guest, Pat, referring to our conversation on the transgender policy for the WIAA. Jim writes, it's always amazing what can be learned when people actually do some research and learn the facts, as opposed to making blind assumptions based on a knee-jerk executive order. Conversely, on the text line, Tom from Hartford says, sadly, the longer the left hangs on to this, the longer the left will lose close elections. Regular people will never warm up to this. Please see reality. Tom, I love that you're a listener, but here's your lecture. You please see reality and stop referring to yourself as a regular person. There are plenty of regular people out here that don't look like you, don't love the same people as you, and also don't get on their high horse about who's regular and who's not. Some people are willing to lose elections to stand up for what's right. The Pledge of Allegiance ends with liberty and justice for all, not just for the regular people. All right, let's bring in Earl Ingram, and we're going to start, unfortunately, on a bit of a down note on things happening in the Milwaukee area with the shooting death of a Milwaukee police officer, and just the blow that deals to a community anytime, but this officer in these circumstances as well. Earl, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
I'm fine, but again, we have not had a chance to talk about this case yet. I'm glad you're here for this, so that we can properly convey, what happened in this case. And sadly, this is something that has become all too familiar as we, continue to allow guns to run rampant on our streets. Can you give folks around the state just kind of an overview of what happened the other day?
Well, a much beloved officer, Officer Kendall Corder, and Christopher McCray, two young officers who have dedicated their lives to service in the city of Milwaukee, and very well loved and known in the community. A young man who grew up in the city of Milwaukee and then made the decision to join the force and do great work, and a lot of great work in building bridges. And so when I say much beloved officers, they were every bit of that. And so they work with a lot of young children, and certainly when people saw them, they were much beloved. I know when I was a young man, we used to know the officers who were in our community as they were a part of the fabric of the community. These young men recreated that in their stint with the Milwaukee Police Department. And, a wayward young man, Tremaine Jones, 22 years old, got into a situation where he and his girlfriend, he was unfaithful. And this just goes to show the insanity that goes on in this nation, and the impact of having so easily accessibility to guns. Tremaine Jones apparently was unfaithful to his girlfriend, and and she called some people that she knew to basically go after her boyfriend for being unfaithful. He brings a gun. The guy that she calls brings a gun, and they begin to shoot it out. The Wild Wild West, OK Corral, all of that insanity that happens, unfortunately, too often in this country. And that situation escalated. And so the police were called, as what happens normally in a situation like that. And they come and they, we're talking about dark. They can't see. They don't know what's going on. And, people they ask them about where the shots came from, and they point to the alley. And Tremaine Jones, a 22-year-old with a, criminal record, is hiding in the bushes. He had fired his weapon at the other guy, and he claims, again, Tremaine Jones, that he heard them coming through the alley. He thought it was the guy he had shot at, who had shot at him, and he, shot 16 times at these officers, and with a high-powered weapon that nobody should have on the street, and unfortunately took the life of, this officer, Kendall Corder. And I'll tell you, man, I've lived through a lot of these things, but our community is taking this harder than I think I ever recall them taking a law enforcement officer losing his life.
No, because again, when we look at every other developed nation on earth, you know what? They have infidelity. They have love triangles. They have domestic disputes. What they don't have is such ready access that somebody feels like it's a good idea to wave at or even shoot guns at an ex-girlfriend, at somebody that's trying to have a disagreement with you, and get into this situation where you think you're firing at somebody as if that's okay, but it actually turns out to be these officers instead. And again, the only foundation there is the guns and the prevalence of them. Everything else exists everywhere else in society. So let's not be blaming society. Let's blame that culture of people everywhere who just can't see that the resolution of this problem is to give up this worship of firearms.
Well, you're talking to a guy who is 70 years old, actually 71, who had never had a gun in his hand until about a year and a half ago that I went through the FBI training, program. I was asked if I would want to do that, and for the first time in my life, I had a weapon in my hand. I would have never probably ever had one, and it went to my grave. My father never had weapons in the house, so I've never had them. My children have never had them, and my nieces and nephews likewise. I'm not opposed to guns. People have a right to guns, but what I am opposed to are laws like those that gun show loophole, where people can sell guns to people like Tremaine Jones and not be held accountable. If you're going to buy a gun from a licensed dealer, there's background checks and 48-hour waiting periods, but you can then take that gun and sell that gun to anybody you want to without any background. And that's how so many guns get into the hands of people like Tremaine Jones. That's what I'm opposed to. That legislation needs to change. And the easy accessibility to guns to even 14-year-old children in the community where I live is that at some point in time it's got to come to an end.
And when you talked about the number of shots that were fired, it brings up the prevalence of extended magazines that carry so many more bullets, and extended magazine was among the weaponry and accessories that were recovered from Jones and from others at the scene here. So I mean the evidence is clear of what it is that allowed this situation to get out of hand. So when this does, and you have, like you said, an officer who was so well regarded and is, killed in the line of duty, where does a community go from there? You obviously you have the funeral, you have the remembrance, and what can we do to just not let it fade away and forget until this happens again?
Well, that's the horrible thing about it. It will fade away. It will be forgotten until the next time. It doesn't happen as often as it used to. But even one time is too much pain for a community that's already in pain to have to deal with, especially with the holiday coming up.
Yeah, especially with any holiday coming up and a long weekend for this family, for this officer. We're talking to Earl Ingram about stories that he's following in Southeast Wisconsin. Got 3 minutes here until the break, and so let's change gears. Let's get just a little lighter here and talk about your thoughts on all the roster moves by the Milwaukee Bucks, and then we're going to take a break. Some of you folks will have a local update. Others will come back here and we'll talk about Attorney General Josh Kaul suing the Department of Education about the impact on mental health for our youth. That'll be after the break. But before we go to that break, again, lots of moves by the Milwaukee Bucks. What were your thoughts on that, Earl?
Well, you're talking to a guy who remembers when the Bucks first came to Milwaukee, and it really, nothing ever surprises me with the Bucks and the Bucks management. They are fearless. They don't ever stay pat. And I will tell you, the release of Damian Lillard and swallowing that $112 million is a sign of just how aggressive the Milwaukee Bucks are. It opens the door. The addition of Miles Turner, a great center. I mean, to replace Brook Lopez, who wasn't mobile, with Miles Turner, who's also a great outside shooter, but a lot more mobile, is going to open the door for Giannis to do a lot more things. The re-signing of Gary Trent and Porter and others pencils the Bucks in now as somebody to be reckoned with in the coming season. A lot more athletic, a lot younger, and it's amazing what they've been able to do. They were just locked in with somebody with no draft choices and basically no future. The Bucks do a wonderful, wonderful job.
Yeah, they do. I mean, again, there were plenty of folks after this last first-round elimination were willing to say, well, that's it. The full rebuilding is going to start. But, rebuilding doesn't mean you tear the whole thing down. Let's consider this a really good remodel. That's in the works here. So we've got Earl Ingram here that we're talking with. We'll continue that for some of you. Others will get a local update. And when we're all back together in about 15 minutes or so, we will talk to Melissa Baldoff with our climate check for this week. And later, James Kelly will talk about some of the stories he's covering for Civic Media across Northwest Wisconsin. This, of course, is all followed by Matt Nair on Air coming up with Dan Schaefer at 9:30, and then just after 10 o'clock, Darren Von Ruden, president of the Wisconsin Farmers Union. And then Todd Alba's on from 2 to 4 today, and you can join me there, along with Trig Vielsen from the Lincoln Project, joining Todd Alba at just after 2 o'clock this afternoon here on the Civic Media Radio Network. I'm Pat Kreitlow. Doubleheader baseball today with the Milwaukee Brewers. After being rained out last night, they are in New York to take on the Mets. So last night's game has been rescheduled as a day game today. Pregame begins at 11:35 across the Civic Media Radio Network. Freddie Peralta pitching for the Brewers in Game 1. Game 2, the regularly scheduled game, pregame at 5:35 this evening with Jacob Mizorowski on the mound pitching against the Mets for the Milwaukee Brewers. 2 doses of Brewers baseball today here on Civic Media. Also coming up on the Maggie Dawn Show this afternoon from 4 to 6, a special Freedoms Under Attack with David Velker, a UW Green Bay professor of humanities and history, Howard Schweber, a UW professor of American politics and political theory, and Kathy Kramer, a UW professor and chair of letters and science in American politics. And then Nightlight with Pete Schwaba from 6 to 8 tonight at 6:30, Milwaukee film critic Matt Mueller, and 7:35 tonight, director Wendy Schneider, all joining Nightlight with Pete Schwaba. Let's continue on things with Earl Ingram now and talk about some of the things he's watching in southeast Wisconsin, which I know, Earl, also includes some of the work being done primarily in, some of the work that's being done by Attorney General Josh Kaul in terms of the restrictions by Donald Trump. And Earl, I'm sorry, I'm a little distracted here because I'm just seeing the breaking news that a split state Supreme Court today has just ruled and invalidated an 1849 law that had been interpreted as banning all abortions. It was a 4-3 ruling. So writing for the liberal majority, Justice Rebecca Dallett found that changes made to abortion laws over the past 50 years implicitly repealed the 1849 law. This is according to a bulletin put out by WisPolitics. Dallett writes, "We conclude that comprehensive legislation enacted over the last 50 years regulating in detail the who, what, where, when, and how of abortion so thoroughly covers the entire subject of abortion that it was meant as a substitute for a 19th century near-total ban." The conservative justices, Rebecca Bradley, Brian Hagedorn, and Annette Ziegler, all dissented. More will be coming about that later. Obviously, Earl, you and I both know that 1849 law has been watched by a lot of folks and has now been thrown out by the state Supreme Court. That's going to get a lot of people talking.
It's some things that's just nauseating to me. And, this constant conversation about what the forefathers thought and what they believed is always open to interpretation. They're not here anymore. And so the last time I checked, they're not here anymore. And so, it's always going to be open to conjecture on both sides. And in your and my lifetime that this is ever settled. And so it's going to continue to be an ongoing conversation, Pat. Sometimes the left is going to win. Sometimes the right is going to win. And really, to be honest with you, I don't know whoever wins in this kind of conversation because I'm a person who believes that people have a right in a nation that professes to be a nation that gives people freedoms to make decisions, even though those decisions might not agree with us. But in the end, Pat, what is the nation and what it was founded under if people don't have freedoms and the rights that, people fought, bled, and died for?
Exactly. So we'll have much more on the Wisconsin Supreme Court throwing out that 1849 statute throughout the day, of course, here on Civic Media. But getting back to what I was saying before, I noticed the breaking news here, and that is Attorney General Josh Kaul suing the Department of Education for the Trump administration. And in this case, Earl, it deals with, you say, the mental health care that can be provided. Oh, it looks like we lost Earl there.
Well,
there you go. Go ahead, Earl. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I was, I thought we was having some problems on our end, but I guess what I wanted to talk about a little bit was, as you stated earlier, the decision of Josh Kaul to join others from across the state, across the nation, in suing this Trump government for taking away, just $5 billion or more that's been kind of allocated after some horrific shootings in schools since 2022 or so, to deal with mental health and mental illness of young people across this country. And if you look at the reason and the rationale why, the federal Department of Education took issue with some of the training that was being taught in the mental health professionals about systemic racism, and and the focus of race-related stress that occurs in some communities across this nation. So because of that, and that part of the training, even though the training is much broader than just that issue, that's reason enough to take those funds away from people and children and families across this entire nation. $5 billion to deal with mental health issues. And if ever there was a time, Pat, that our nation is struggling with mental health issues with young people, it's now, with the internet and all of those things. They don't take any of those things into consideration. They just move unilaterally to eliminate things based on diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, and it's a particularly ugly chapter that I think we're going to look back on, this attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Earl Ingram, as always, I really appreciate the visit, appreciate your insight. Hope you have a good family-friendly 4th of July weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
You as well.
All right. Thank you, Earl. When we come back, we're going to have Melissa Baldoff here. We will, of course, talk about climate issues, but also in her role, she's got a political hat that she wears much of the time, and we'll ask her about this state Supreme Court decision throwing out the 1849 law. Coming up next, here up north. So that was something.
That was incredibly something, and I could not be more happy about this.
I know. I and of course, as I'm doing this, I'm scrolling. The toughest part about Supreme Court decisions, and this one's 77 pages, for God's sake, but
Right.
It's not easy to see where the dissent begins, and so you're scrolling,
Yeah.
scrolling, and so of course you've got Ziegler writing, the majority opinion is a jaw-dropping exercise of judicial will, placing personal preference over the constitutional roles of the branches of our state government. They make up their own version. I mean, you can always count on them to get kind of personal in these things.
Right.
And I'm sure Hagedorn probably put in something out of his own. Jill Karofsky has a very long concurring opinion, and it looks like Dalit is more on the law, and Karofsky is just, she's just ready to jump right in and throw some haymakers of her own, So I think it's going to be interesting reading when I can get to this. So,
I
all right.
agree.
So we'll get that. We'll take whatever time we need on that, and we're going to do the cows just first, just because they're fun, and then we'll.
Great.
Yeah. Oh, and honestly, I guess I'll try to find out quickly, but I sent you the note that the public land sell-off was struck from the GOP bill. I'll bet it stayed out of it. I worry that it was put back in and I wasn't aware of it. But I can't imagine that thing managed to sneak back in. So we'll maybe mention that as well. So,
Okay.
what are you up to for the 4th?
4th is always a really busy day for us because we just have like a lot of people in our lives who have parties that day. So we've got one of Joe's childhood best friends. They have a party early in the day that we go to. And then our niece, the youngest niece, her birthday was yesterday, and they always do her party on the 4th. So we'll have that in the afternoon. And then we've got friends in Shorewood who do an evening party because they live right across the street from Lake Michigan. So they've got the park where we do the fireworks in town. So they've got like the perfect front yard view for the fireworks.
Nice. Okay.
So yeah, it's always we always have like at least 3 things to do, sometimes more. but it's always fun.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Tony has put up an AI version of this. Well, you know what? For once, I can't quibble with AI. This is not a bad summary of what they've got here. You know, it's short and sweet and gets to the point. So I guess I will start with that. Yeah, and we'll just see what else comes up. So between the budget deal, yeah, we have to do the budget deal too. God.
Yeah.
What a week I'm having today.
I know. I was like, and of course, this is the time. It's all happening when I've got a press call at 11:30.
Yep.
So, you know.
Okay. So we're going to do
There we go.
Abortion, then we're going to do the budget deal, and then we're going to do
Okay.
Happy Cows. And then we'll see if we got time for the other two climate stories.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, where are you on the budget deal?
I think it was the right decision. I understand the frustration that many Democrats have because this budget isn't the budget we need and it's not the budget we deserve. And it's the best deal we were going to get.
Yeah, again, Governor Tim Michels would not have would not have this budget. So so that election matters. The Supreme Court election really matters, you know. So
exactly.
I think that's definitely the underlying theme here, you know.
Right. But all of the Democrats who are not going to vote for it are right. That's
they're okay.
That's their role.
This is
that is
truly
their role to draw that contrast.
Yeah, this is truly bipartisan. And you know, which means not everybody's happy, but it's what a lot of people are like, okay, this is what we got to be. So, all right, 15 seconds.
Great.
I am very thankful that Melissa Baldoff is willing to come in here once a week and talk about climate issues. It's a subject near and dear to her heart, but she wears many hats as a consultant, as a political strategist, and more. And so we're probably going to spend more time in this segment on a couple of other matters, and then we'll get to a little bit of our climate check and the happy cows that can result from a little bit of creativity when it comes to solar farms that are out there. But Melissa is going to help us first deal with the new budget deal right after we talk about the breaking news of the state Supreme Court throwing out the 1849 law that some had considered to be an abortion ban. Melissa, good morning. What's your take on the state Supreme Court throwing that 1849 law out, kicking it to the curb?
Good morning. It is a good morning. And, you know, this is exactly what, you know, I think so many people wanted to see happen was a fair and impartial court invalidating a law that, you know, is almost 200 years old and really impacted the rights of women to make our own healthcare decisions. So this is a law that predates us even, you know, just knowing about germs, right? I mean, this is ridiculous that this has been on the books for so long. And it is just an incredible win for the people of this state to have women's rights and freedoms restored by this court.
Well, and on top of that, for all this talk about, you know, originalism and what founders intended and all that, you know, why would we take away from the notion that we have had continuously changing government, continuously changing society for these past 150, 200 years? And what the progressive justices were saying was, look, there have been all of these other changes to abortion law over the years, so many different changes that it basically can't help but overrule the stuff that was written earlier, because again, elections have consequences. You have different people in charge each time. They've made these changes of law. Looking at this, and I've skimmed it as quickly as I could, and I have to say, this AI summary that Tony has helped put together and shared with us is, I think, pretty good. It says the court erased the state's near total criminal abortion ban as a matter of statutory construction, not constitutional law. Abortions may resume within the detailed and sometimes onerous regulatory framework enacted since the 1970s. They note that the legislature retains full authority to tighten or loosen that framework, and the ruling invites renewed legislative deliberation rather than ending the debate. And again, Melissa, it's just a matter of, again, with all the respect you can have for your founders, they don't get to tie our hands. We still get to live in the here and now, whether you're talking about muskets versus assault weapons or women's role in society and the rights they have now versus then.
Exactly. This is one of those perfect illustrations of why the, Constitution is a living document. It was always intended to adapt and change with the times, and the framers could ever have conceived of the society we have now. I think if you took, the framers and dropped them in today's society, their heads might explode when they saw, all of the technology we have and where we've come, and that's just the whole point, is that it was always intended to be a document that was changed, was adapted. The only thing that isn't supposed to change is, the core principles and beliefs of, life, liberty, and justice for all. That's the foundation, not, any other specific prescriptive words necessarily, because those can change and should change and have changed. And the abortion law here is, a great example. It's, kind of like the, ship of Theseus, right? And that's, I think, where we've gotten with the end of this case, right? Is like where it started, it's changed so much. Is it even that thing that it started as anymore? And it's really not. It's changed so many times. What the law is on abortion and what the ruling is. So, I think that this is a great day for women, to make their own healthcare decisions again, even though we know that there are limits there, but, protect things like IVF, which would have been completely at risk here, and make sure that, women and families have the right to make their own decisions about what's best for them.
Yeah, folks that want to start their own theocracy can do it, someplace else, because right here, every election matters. And yes, we live in a time where the next election is always the most important election. The one that switched control of this state Supreme Court was the most important election of its time. Prior to that, the re-election of Governor Tony Evers was the most important election of its time, which takes us to our next subject, the new state budget deal. Governor Evers worked it out with Republicans who control the legislature. It will be a very bipartisan vote later today in the Assembly and the Senate, with Democrats voting yes and no, Republicans voting yes and no, and people having very strong feelings on depending on what end of the spectrum they're coming from. And I'm not saying all that to say that this is a good deal, Melissa, but again, if Tony Evers had not won election, the way this would look under a Governor Tim Michels administration is a hell of a lot different.
It absolutely is. And, this isn't the budget that the governor wanted. The budget the governor wanted is the one he proposed. But this is, I think, this is a very good deal considering what the alternative was. And this, I think, shows the incredible commitment of the governor and his staff. I want to make sure to really shout out my former colleagues in the governor's office and throughout state government for their work on this, because yes, it is the leaders and the principals, making a lot of these deals, but it's also an incredible amount of work by the staff to get there. And their commitment to this is just unparalleled. But I applaud the governor and our Democratic leader for getting there, because this is, I do believe, the best deal we could get out of this legislature. But at the same time, I respect and value and support the Democrats who are going to vote against this, because it's not what we deserve, and it's not the best budget for the state. It's the best budget we could get right now. but it's the best budget it's best. Yeah, but it's not the best budget for the state. So, I think that they are correct to, hold the line for themselves and for their constituents, and to draw the contrast of, what is going to be in the state budget and what could be and should be in the state budget. And they'll really have a chance to demonstrate that when Democrats are in the majority in, a couple years here with the budget. That's the goal. That's what we think is going to happen. Democrats taking back the Senate, and an incredibly good chance to take back the Assembly. And the budget that will pass in 2 years because of that is going to look a whole lot different than this one, and it's going to be a whole lot better for the people of this state. So I think this was, the right choice, even though it's a very difficult one. But Governor Evers has proven time and time again that he is willing to make the difficult choices that need to happen.
We're talking to Melissa Baldoff, and we've covered the legislative matters, the court matters. Now let's get to something that really matters: happy cows. And which
I gotta just say, I still take a lot of issue with the whole marketing campaign of happy cows come from California.
Oh yeah,
from years ago, from years past. I mean, it's
that's bold pun intended, by the way. So yeah, we know where the happy cows are, and
that's right,
and they're up here. The story actually comes out of Morris, Minnesota, a University of Minnesota campus out there. But for all of the caterwauling about solar farms that says, well, the crops won't be able to grow now and cattle won't be able to graze now, I was always a little dubious of that, because like anything else, you pick your shot. You use what is best for the land if you can. But if you can use a little creativity, then so much the better. And the story out of Minnesota is all about how a solar array, a whole bunch of solar panels, are put on top of basically an electric powered vehicle, a tractor, truck, whatever the case may be, that slowly moves along the field so that the cows can graze in the shade underneath the panels. I don't know if I have a particular climate question here. I'm just here to salute good old American ingenuity for getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah, this is such a cool story. I loved when you sent me this. I mean, talk about innovation. And like you said, using what you have. So this is, I think, just incredible to see the fact that, we know that we have seen so many farmers and producers and folks in the ag industry be incredibly committed to climate solutions. And it is just great to see that, you can do both things, right? Two things can be true at the same time, as my husband Joseph Pecky likes to say quite often, and that is that we can do right by the planet and continue doing business in a way that is going to be productive and beneficial. So, I think this is a great example of that, and I hope to see, more. I hope to see some farms in Wisconsin employing this approach, because it seems really neat.
I've never been able to ask Melissa a personal question like this, but she has opened up the door for it. Tell me that Joseph Pecky has used that saying during discussions between the two of you to say, well, two things can be true at once. I didn't do the dishes and I was very busy today.
No, so he definitely uses it in personal conversation with me and with the kids. But not to get out of his share of the household chores.
All right. The solar trailer, by the way, has a capacity of 60 kilowatt hours. The panels are equivalent to about 18 kilowatt hours. It obviously does not have a long extension cord, that's tied to the grid. So you're powering these batteries that can then be used, later on down the road. But again, it's just another way of saying that invention never stops. When I was there was a special legislative committee on biofuels, and there were a lot of people going, oh, ethanol is terrible for the planet, blah, blah, blah. But the research that's being done on biodiesel all across Wisconsin, and so that you need less of a carbon footprint, to grow the corn or the different crops that make biofuels. I was just amazed by. People wanted this knee-jerk reaction to oppose ethanol. look at the research and watch how it's evolving and unfolding. And that frankly, given where the Trump administration is, I think that's where we're going to get, the positive stories is the ongoing role of innovation.
I agree. And that I'm going to use that to tie back to very briefly, and I'll make a point here, I promise, our conversation on the budget. And one of the reasons I think that the budget deal is the right one is because of the investment that is coming into our university system with this budget, when Republicans initially wanted to do nothing. And now we're going to get a big investment for the UW system. And, this story we see is in partnership, the project, with one of the University of Minnesota campuses.
Yep.
And the campus is carbon neutral now, thanks to their advancements in energy production. So we want to make sure that we can keep innovating on our campuses as well. That's very important to our progress.
Melissa Baldoff with our climate check and much more. Thanks, Melissa. Have a great 4th.
Thanks. You too.
All right, a local update is next for some of you, and the rest of you will come back here for some final news and notes and a visit with James Kelly. Remember, you can follow me at upnorthnewswi.com and, of course, right here mornings on the Civic Media Radio Network. Okay. Just tell me you don't have any breaking news too. I can't handle any more breaking news.
Not as of this morning.
I'm full.
Yeah.
It's simultaneously been awesome and a pain.
Well, it keeps you on your toes, huh? The show goes by real quick.
Oh my God. It's just, like I say, this is what we trained for, for days like this. But we've now had, 2 days in a row like this, and I'm ready to be done. So, all right, let's see. Did I paste your notes in here? He did not, but I've got them handy. They're right over here. Let's see. I always love it when I go, did I paste something in? And I know I put it on the clipboard, but between the copy and the paste, something comes up. And you're, next thing you know, it's not there anymore. And it's like, okay, go find it again. And there. Okay. So we got nurses going on strike. Is it all against one company?
It's Sentia Health and Aspirus. So it's technically the Minnesota Nurses Association, so more Duluth, but it's also in Superior, some of their facilities there.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, good. And see the St. Joseph's finalized. And we did talk with Angela Stroud. We had a big segment with her on the Superior thing, so we'll allude to it.
Yeah,
and
cool.
Then, get into it from there. So, okay, let's see. No, actually, we'll do that there. Okay, we're set. So, what time do we get going here? 90 seconds. All right, I'll see you in a bit. Ticket Friday continues this week across Civic Media, including on this program, even though it will be a best of program on the 4th of July. It's a Friday. It will be a Free Ticket Friday, so be listening for that show. Some great segments that you might have missed from the past few weeks here, where we will also give the keyword to text in using the Civic Media app. That'll put you in the running for 4 great seats to a specific Brewers game. In fact, I can't tell you the keyword now. I am going to tell you, because we happen to know it, I'm going to tell you the game that it's for. So this coming Friday, we're going to be giving away 4 great seats at American Family Field to the game the following Friday against the Washington Nationals. So if you have any interest in that at all, you're going to want to tune in Friday morning throughout the show, 6 to 9 a.m., and you're going to have till the end of the show to text in the keyword that we're going to give you coming up on Friday as part of Free Ticket Friday with the Milwaukee Brewers. And again, doubleheader today, Brewers and Mets, 11:35 this morning for the pregame, making up the game that was rained out last night. Then again at 5:35 for Jacob Mezarowski pitching for the Brewers in Game 2 against the Mets. James Kelly is here now to tell us about some of the stories that he's following for Civic Media out of our newsroom in Chippewa Falls. James, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Pat. How are you doing?
Good. Let's start with a nurses' strike in the Duluth Superior area. When is that supposed to get going? What's that issue there?
Yeah, so last week, the Minnesota Nurses Association voted to authorize these strikes. This week announced that they were going to be undertaking them starting next week. They're required to give the hospitals 10 days of notice so that they can, get just fill-in staff, figure out a staffing plan for their patients. Because even though unionizing and going on strike is the nurse's right, you also don't want patients to not have the care they need. So they're complaining of short staffing and just kind of being ignored by management when they say, our opinion as the people who are on the ground is we need more people.
Yeah, and that's also, there's issues with nurses in Madison. It was the center of a state Supreme Court opinion from last week, but again, calling attention to the challenges in healthcare, especially in staffing, and whether some of that understaffing is by design rather than by circumstance. You've also been following the bill that was signed allowing a superior utility company to get federal funds for lead service line replacements. Representative Angela Stroud visited with us just after 7 a.m. to talk all about what came along with that was the agreement that was reached that would reduce the cost for homeowners having those lead lines replaced. So either head over to civicmedia.us or Spotify or Apple and listen back to the show and hear all about it. And James will continue to follow developments on that as well. But I want to get right into the next story that you've been following because it's right down the road here. I can see St. Joseph's Hospital in Chippewa Falls, across a couple of farm fields here. It's been shuttered up for over a year. And now the Chippewa Valley Health Cooperative Group is going to get set to open the doors again.
Yeah, and a lot sooner than I think most people would think. They were saying that it could open as early as August, kind of in a partial capacity, where they'll be doing some clinical services and could really offer the same services that St. Joseph's was offering before the closures by the end of the year. This is still kind of a temporary measure. It's not a permanent reopening of the hospital until they can get their new hospital in Lake Hallie opened.
Yeah, so again, you've got the facilities there. They're not meant to be permanent, which is why a different hospital building is going to go up. But again, ever since HSHS, an Illinois-based system, shut down that hospital and Sacred Heart Hospital in Eau Claire and some Purveyor clinics abruptly last year, there's been a lot of people working behind the scenes to increase healthcare options. And by the way, the $15 million that the legislature allocated to help address this crisis never was released by the legislature, and Senator Jeff Smith told us in this segment yesterday he'd certainly be looking to see if that was included in the state budget agreement that the Assembly and the Senate are going to take up today. So no doubt, James is going to be following that and following the money and seeing if it's in there. And if not, I'm sure Senator Smith and others will propose an amendment to the budget bill, and we'll see if it finally is a done deal. And let's end on some happy news about a bald eagle at a raptor animal hospital up in the Spooner area.
Yeah, I always like to end on a little bit of a positive note, go into the next show with everyone feeling good.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so this eagle named Kier was rescued in critical condition from the Chippewa flowage in September. Spent 10 months rehabbing at this Spooner Winged Freedom Raptor Hospital, and got dozens of skin grafts with fish skin, apparently. I didn't know that was a thing they could do, but that was an interesting part of the story as well, and had 3 surgeries. And then last week, they released the eagle back into the wild. Apparently, it had become a little bit of a community celebrity. So about 100 people came out to watch him get released into the wild, and he just kind of flew right into a nearby tree and started hanging out there. So maybe a little anticlimactic at the end.
Yeah, the problem, though, with the fish skin transplants is now all the other eagles have been trying to catch them and eat them. It's just, you don't bring a rim shot to the news very often, but sometimes fish skin transplants will allow you to do that. James Kelly, following all of that, thank you. Better late than ever, following everything at the Civic Media Newsroom in Chippewa Falls. Hope you've got a good, relaxing 4th of July weekend planned for you there.
Oh, plenty of fireworks show all around the area.
You can't miss that. Just get somebody to take you out into the middle of Lake Wissota, and then you get fireworks in the round, 360 degrees of it. So you get it wherever you are around here. It's Wisconsin, for goodness sakes. Everybody's got fireworks.
Yeah, I used to live in a beach town. I know what it's all about.
Oh, of course you do. Boy, this is a downer, but I'm going to say it from a public safety standpoint. I saw a post last week from some group as a public service announcement saying, this weekend will be the last weekend that some people have 10 fingers. I was like, okay, that's dark, but it's true.
Yeah, well, we had back in Bayville, where I grew up, one person put their big box of fireworks in the sand incorrectly, and it tipped over towards the beach where all the people were. So that was just about the scariest thing that could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. James, thank you very much. Have a good weekend.
Have a good one.
Let me close with this from Ardith on Facebook. This day is more proof that local elections matter. Fairer maps, excellent candidates, calling out Republicans by name who vote against bills that support the middle class. That'll all make Wisconsin shine again. I like the way Melissa Baldoff keeps sending this message loud and clear. Ardith, thank you very much for that note. Tomorrow, birthday cake. We'll explain. Coming up next, Matt Nair on air. My thanks to today's guest and to all of you for being here. I'm Pat Kreitlow, founding editor of Up North News, part of Courier Newsroom, a pro-democracy news network. Have a great day. See you tomorrow morning here up north. And that's all she wrote.